waiting lists, poor cancer performance and a struggle to access care.
The Prime Minister says the health service must reform or die.
And then there were four. The Tory leadership race continues with Robert Jenrick now in the lead and Tom Tugendhat trailing.
Harry's visa mystery. The case over whether he lied about drug use on his application has been quietly closed by a judge in a sealed ruling.
Fight night for presidential hopefuls. We look at the world's reactions to the first debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris.
Following the fiery face-off, Taylor Swift endorsed Harris. So we're asking this morning, should stars get involved in politics?
And it's almost time for the National Cat Awards. We'll be meeting some of the formidable felines, bringing stories of heroism and companionship.
Good morning. Cristiano Ronaldo has laid into his former boss Eric Ten Hag at Manchester United as the club posts a loss for the fifth consecutive year. Gareth Southgate, meanwhile, gives his first interview since the Euros, and in tennis, Britain make a winning start to their Davis Cup campaign.
Sorry.
Good morning. An even colder night to come tonight, but it should warm up as we head into the weekend. Find out all the details with me a little later on.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Ellie Costello.
I'm Nana Akua, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Now, of course, we've got lots of important things to talk to you about today, including Labour's orders for the biggest reform in NHS history. That's, of course, our top story today. But you might have noticed a little jingle-jangle going on here. We've got lots of bling on the table, haven't we?
Yes, because Greggs have come out with their own line of jewellery. You're probably laughing, you're thinking, no, they can't. But yes, it's to celebrate, sort of celebrates London Fashion Week.
Yes.
And there are certain items. I mean, what's that one? That's the
The Jammy Dodger necklace. Yes, 22 carat gold this is.
Is it?
It's a Greggs collaboration for London Fashion Week, and it will set you back a mere £45.
All right. 40.
yeah.
I said more than that.
OK,
22 carat gold.
well, what about this, then? This Greggs signet ring. Now, this is going to be tricky to show you, but...
Do it on
that's a steak
I'll
bake,
do it
is
on there. Is it a steak bake?
I don't know, is that right?
That's the logo, isn't it?
A steak bake.
Oh, that's the logo.
Look at that. It's probably got nickel in it. I can't wear that. I'm allergic.
Probably is.
Quite partial to a steak bake, actually.
How much do you think that's worth?
I think it's a little bit chunky. The other one, did you say 22 carat gold? Is that correct?
Yeah, 22 carat
I'm
gold.
getting that case. I'm going to go £56.
48, you were close.
Okay, not too bad.
£48. And my personal favourite,
Oh, my
I'm going
gosh.
to drop them now, is the sausage roll earrings.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, and they even say Greggs on the back.
Let's say Greggs on the back.
They say Greggs on the back, and they're sausage roll. 22 carat plated, I should say.
Are they more expensive than the real sausage rolls?
Guess how much these are? Yeah, slightly.
OK, 22 carat gold again?
Yeah, plated.
OK, I'm going to go for £38.
36, you're very good at this game.
Yeah.
And finally, my favourite, and I'm actually wearing it
This
myself.
suits you,
Nana,
actually.
look at this.
I'm jealous of that.
wow.
It's got all the pastries on it and
This is a charm bracelet, right?
lots of stuff on
Are you
that.
going to guess as well?
I know the answer.
Dear, OK. I'm going to... Because it's a bit more bling to it, it's a little bit weightier. I sound like I'm from the Antiques Roadshow, don't I?
do.
I'm going to go for £52.
£96,
What?
Aidan.
This
And
reminds
look
me...
at, there's a
Not the
coffee
expert I
cup
thought
on
it was.
there, a steak bake, a
Yeah.
cookie.
Is
There's
it
a donut round
donut?
here. All of the Greggs items on there.
See, this reminds me of my first ever job in TV.
Really?
Do you know
Go on.
what it was?
Go on.
Bid Up
Shopping
TV.
channel.
Oh,
Yeah,
I've
Bid
heard
Up
of that.
TV.
Yeah.
Price drop and Bid Up TV. Want one of these? I got 1,000 of them. Come on.
That looks
come on.
really difficult doing that
It
because
was
you don't
really hard
have
work.
you
It
don't,
was
you
really
don't, you
good
don't have
fun.
an autocue, I imagine, do you?
No
You just have
autocue.
to chat and chat for hours.
You'd be
hours.
very good at that, Aidan.
4 hours. You would be.
And you've got to
actually.
sell.
And you've got to
Yeah,
sell.
got to sell.
Oh, my goodness, look, the cookie one.
Oh, the
opens.
cookie opens.
The Jammy Dodger
The
opens.
Jammy
there you go.
Oh, that's
Dodger.
fantastic.
But who would buy a Greggs London Fashion Week collaboration piece? Who would do that? I don't know. Would you be tempted?
No, I'm sorry.
£96 for the charm bracelet?
My brother's got some... Sorry, not my brother, he's too old. My nephew has some Greggs pyjamas.
So there are people out there
There
who
are
are
people out
buying
there.
this
Just
stuff.
for novelty thing, it's popular among students. He's gone back to Bristol University this weekend and I think he'll be wearing them in, well, all day, really. That's what they do, isn't it?
I don't mind the earrings so much because they don't... You
Nana,
may not
please.
know that they're sausage rolls. And a little bit of gold against my skin would look nice.
Conversation starter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do we get to keep these?
Yeah, I think you can, actually. So there you go. They can be yours. You can have the sausage roll
Although my
earrings.
daughter might like the Jammy Dodger.
Yeah, the Jammy Dodger's quite nice, actually.
It opens
But
up.
anyway, let us know if you'd be in the market for it. Greggs and London Fashion Week is coming out tomorrow.
Very nice.
This 5-piece collection.
Lovely.
Okay. Something to smile about, isn't it?
Brilliant.
Because there's lots of very serious news around this morning, including this message from the Prime Minister, who says the NHS must reform or die. It's a shocking report by former Labour Health Minister Lord Darzi, who's described the state of the NHS as dire and in critical condition. The report finds that failings in care has led to the deaths of thousands of patients a year.
Big picture finding is the NHS is in a serious, critical condition. But the vital signs are normal, which will suggest that we can do something about this. To do it well, we need to engage the whole staff, patients, the public, the political leadership, all aligned to make that change happen as quickly as we can, because we can.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer is set to make a speech on the biggest re-imaging of the NHS later on this morning. The planned major surgery will move funds away from unproductive hospitals.
Well, journalist and political commentator Benedict Spence joins us now. What do you make of this, Benedict? Because it's troubling, isn't it, this report? But it's not entirely surprising. We've known this for years.
Good morning. Yes, this is something that I think everybody is very aware of. Not even if they have had a cause to use the NHS themselves, or people that they know have had cause to use the NHS themselves. It's sort of almost front page news every week, some sort of NHS issue. We're all very aware that waiting times are up, that waiting times of over a year have skyrocketed. And of course, we're all very aware of these strikes by nurses, by junior doctors, proposed strikes by GPs, etc. All is not well. People are not happy. And, you know, that things were sort of ticking along not particularly well before the pandemic, but the pandemic is the thing, I think, that sort of really pushed a lot of NHS services over the edge, and that they've been sort of unable to cope since and catch up. But we also have to be wary of blaming everything here on COVID and on lockdown policies, as damaging, deeply damaging as they were. A large part of this is because of massively changing demographics in the UK. We have an aging population. Ellie, as you say, this is not news. This is not something that was unforeseen. This is something that policymakers have been told is coming for decades now. Older people tend to use the health service more by definition, but at the same time, the country isn't quite producing the economic growth that it needs to support a state-run health sector to keep pace with an aging population. So that in itself is leading to other issues. For instance, we're not training enough doctors. What do you do then? You import doctors and nurses from abroad. Well, that causes its own problems, of course. The Darzi report says what we're all thinking, which is that it's a disastrous situation, but it can be rectified. But crucially, its remit was not to look at solutions, and this gives the government sort of a very open-ended prescription, if you like, to do what it wants, to do what it thinks is the right thing. And I think it's very noticeable that Sir Keir Starmer is set to say that this is going to take 10 years. Of course, you know, he's only got 5 years as things currently stand, but a couple of weeks ago he did say, look, all the damage that's been caused by the Tories is going to take me at least 2 terms. And here's going to be another thing where he's going to say, you're going to have to give us 2 terms, 10 years, in order to fix the mess that the Tories have made.
I don't think we should give... I would actually say to him, look, no, we'll give you 5 to see if you can make any changes. Look, if you, Benedict Spence, could make one change in the NHS, what would it be?
I mean, I would change the funding model. I think that as things currently stand, the NHS is not motivated to put money where it necessarily needs to. And I know that this is very unpopular amongst a lot of people because they say you can't run a healthcare service along market lines. But actually, most countries in the world do, and they manage it a lot better than we do. Ours is the only system in the world that runs like this. And surprise, surprise, it's one of the worst performing in the developed world. I think you need a much more motivated healthcare system, because otherwise you run into the problems of all government departments. Because, again, the NHS is simply the largest government department that is facing very similar problems to all of them, which is that it is bloated. It has huge questions around its ever-expanding remit and the allocation of resources, but you don't see very smart decisions being made in terms of where to put money, in terms of updating systems. This is going to be one of Keir Starmer's 3 big pledges about creating a digital NHS. What does that mean? Well, quite literally, it just means getting its online systems into the 21st century. A lot of NHS hospitals are running on massively outdated computer systems, and we see this actually in the way that it's very easy for people to hack its systems and hold aspects of it to ransom. So that's probably what I would be doing. I'd be looking at changing the focus on how it is that the healthcare services run, what it is that motivates it, and getting it out of a situation where people are, again, as we've seen very frequently, punished for whistleblowing. If you're a normal NHS doctor or nurse and you try to point out failings in the system, or you go to the press or to politicians and you say this isn't working and it's going to cost lives, you are the person that is targeted very often, not the NHS trust in question.
And Benedict, where is the money going to come from? Because that is the million-dollar question at the moment. We're hearing about the £22 billion black hole. We're hearing these promises that working people are not going to be taxed, but then we're hearing that the NHS is in a state of do or die, and it needs more funding, according to Lord Darcy. What happens next?
I mean, the funding question is, of course, a difficult one because, as I said at the top of the show, what this country doesn't currently have is enough wealth creation to fund the public services that it currently wants to in its current form. If you taxed people too hard, you end up hitting growth. This country has had anemic growth for a very long time. That has been one of the contributing factors to the slowdown in the NHS, is that we are simply not creating as much wealth as we need. So this is going to be very difficult. And ultimately, it is going to involve, if the Tories don't want to, if the Labour Party don't want to take money from tax, from sort of ordinary taxation, from income tax or whatever it might be, it's going to be things like capital gains tax. They're going to have to look at things like inheritance tax, which will be one-off taxes that will raise a fair bit of money in the next couple of years, and then afterwards won't raise anywhere near as much money, even as they used to, because people will look for ways to avoid this, and because actually taxation from general taxation will have gone down, because growth will have gone down as well. The alternative is that we take money from other government departments. That's not going to go down particularly well, given that a lot of them are struggling as it is. But one of the things that needs to also be pointed out is that before the general election, Wes Streeting went on a bit of a grand tour of competing national healthcare systems around the world, including places like Australia, Canada, the countries that are poaching a lot of doctors from this country to see what it is that they do better. And a lot of that remit was about efficiency. It wasn't about finding money. It was about creating savings so that you can then allocate those saved resources into other areas of the health service. And I do think that that will have to play a very large part in this.
Well, listen, Benedict Spence, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you this morning. It's 12 minutes after 6 o'clock. If you just tuned in, welcome. This is a GB News Breakfast.
Now to the US now, and some Republican officials, donors and advisors have said that Donald Trump, the Republican presidential candidate, has botched his debate with the Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris.
Assistant US opinion editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Codham, joins us now. So, Poppy, you say that they're saying that he's botched his debate with Kamala. What particular incidents are they pointing to, and in what way do they think that has happened?
Well, this is quite typical, Trump-land problems. I would say that this is a botching, but it's not a particularly unique one. It's the same thing he's been doing since 2016. It's the same thing he did in 2020. The man is very difficult to control. He doesn't listen to his advisors, and he rambles. And we really saw that when he did do the debate, the most later one, with Kamala Harris. So probably his worst answer was on abortion. You could tell that he was getting quite angry when Kamala Harris was kind of needling him on his plans. She starts saying, first of all, what he's saying about things like partial birth abortions. The Democrats saying we want to have abortions after children are born. Well, that's not true. The moderator jumps in and goes, that's not true. You can see that Trump's face actually contorts with anger. He's irritated by this. You can even see on the screen at the moment, Kamala Harris is kind of like laughing. She looks relaxed. Trump looks angry. And what I thought was quite funny about this debate is it was a complete reversal of what had happened with Joe Biden just a few months ago, where you see one person seems to be calm, above it all, laughing at certain moments. As you can see, the other contestant is struggling. Unfortunately, that's the position that Donald Trump was put in on Monday night.
It does show, doesn't it, still the significance of these television debates. You think that we're in this post-television era. It's now all on social media. But actually, it changed the game, didn't it, for Joe Biden? It essentially ruled him out of the presidential race. And we're seeing, based on what commentators are saying, that it's Kamala Harris that came out on top on Tuesday, which many people didn't expect.
I will say this is quite a strange election. The people that Kamala Harris needs to win over are independent voters. The US electorate is so polarised at the moment. There are very few people actually turning on the television and going, oh, I don't know who Donald Trump is. Everybody knows who Donald Trump is. What's interesting is that not many people know who Kamala Harris is. She was very much in the background during her vice presidency. It was all about Joe Biden. That's one of the reasons he found it really difficult when he had that disastrous debate and everybody suddenly realised that this man is clearly not fit to run for a second term. maybe this is significant in terms of people got to see that Kamala Harris she's younger, she's feistier, she can string a sentence together, so that's certainly better than Biden. But how many people in Pennsylvania, which is the all-important swing state, are actually going to have watched that debate and gone, there's a clear-cut winner here? I don't think Trump performed well, but I don't think he performed disastrously. Like, he wasn't really Joe Biden. He's just Trump. Trump always does this. And Kamala Harris, she really struggled in the first 20 minutes. She recovered at the end of the debate, but really, a lot of people have tuned off by then. That was a 90-minute debate. That's a movie-long debate. Not many people are that interested in politics. They're there for the headlines. And I don't think it's consequential as that Joe Biden moment. That was really unique. This, I think, is it going to swing the election? I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Well, at least you know what you're going to get with Donald Trump. There's people, because Kamala Harris is a completely unknown quantity. As you said, she struggled with the first 20 minutes. In your mind, if you were a betting woman, who would you say is ahead in the actual race rather than just the debate?
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Donald Trump. I absolutely believe that Donald Trump is going to win the election. I've been saying it since the primaries. I was saying that he would win the primary race, and then I would say he would win the general election. Obviously, things have changed slightly. Now Biden is out of the race. I think if Joe Biden had stayed in the race, I would be 100% certain that he'd win. Now that he's out, I'd say I'm more like 85% certain that he's going to win. And the reason why is, again, is what I've just said. The electorate is so polarised. There are very few people up for grabs at the moment. And if you look at any of the kind of snap independent polling, of those people who aren't registered, either Democrat or Republican, where they are leaning towards Donald Trump. If the polls are even slightly wrong in the way they are in 2016 and the way they were in 2020, Donald Trump is still on track to winning the presidency. And I think the Democratic camp shouldn't be so cocky. Yeah, they did a good debate, but they haven't won those people over yet. This is still a coin flip. For them, it's a coin flip. For me, I think Donald Trump's going to win.
What does he need to do in the meantime then, Poppy? I mean, as you say, his feathers were ruffled, weren't they, in this debate? And he didn't quite seize on his strengths. I mean, on the economy, those answers on the economy, those are his strengths. And he's talking about rally sizes. Does he just need to focus now on policy, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's difficult to tell Donald Trump how to do things. He's Donald Trump. He doesn't really listen to his advisors. And it would be quite odd if he decided that he was suddenly going to be a normal politician and acted like one. I mean, ideally, he would try and keep his mouth shut. He wouldn't do these personal attacks on Kamala Harris. No, because he hasn't got a very good nickname for her. I don't think Conor Kamala is anywhere near as good as Crooked Hillary. But, yes, you're right. He has to appeal to his base. He needs to have those independents feeling that he is actually the sensible option. So he needs to attack her as a radical. He needs to attack her on her 2019 primary positions. He needs to say, this is not the kind of Joe Biden successor that she's presenting herself as. She's not. She's very much in the woke wing of the Democratic Party. And he needs to have as few scandals as possible. That's going to be difficult for him. He's still going to be in and out of court. But he needs to minimize that. He's like, remember the good times with me. Remember the economy was better with me. Remember what your cost of living is like now. Look at the border. Look at crime. I'm your safe bet. For once, he has to say, I'm your safe bet. Donald Trump is the safe bet. And that, I think, will carry him over the line.
He's got to stop talking about, I think he was saying, immigrants eating cats and things like that.
Yeah, I thought we might get into that. This is obviously something that particularly in the UK found was very left field. This is about Springfield, Ohio. Now, obviously, that was quite a wild statement, particularly out of context, but he is addressing an issue that a lot of American voters are really angry about, not eating pets, but immigration. This is a town of 50,000 people in Ohio that has just had 20,000 migrants come in the last couple of years. That's a massive transformation of a town. There was an incident where one of the new immigrant drivers had hit a school bus and killed a small child, and that's created a lot of tensions in the community. So again, Donald Trump, he says stuff that's wild, but he is still addressing stuff that people do care about. And I think sometimes we dismiss him at our peril. I actually think that was probably not about the cats and dogs, but the lesson behind it might actually resonate with people.
Yeah. It's sort of funny, isn't it, really? But that's the thing. People leave with those words on their lips, laughing. But you sort of think, well, I mean, at least he got you thinking, and just, even if he's way off.
Yeah, that's Donald Trump. That's Donald Trump. You
That's
can't
Donald
put him in
Trump.
a
We
box.
accept him for that. Yes. Poppy, lovely to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
indeed.
much.
Thank you. Now, it's just coming up to 20 minutes past 6. Let's take a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
Rachel Reeves has defended claiming taxpayer-funded expenses for heating her second home after the government's plans to cut winter fuel payments for pensioners was cleared in the Commons.
In yesterday's exchanges at Prime Minister's questions, Rishi Sunak pushed Sir Keir Starmer for details on the impact of the cuts, which will see 10 million pensioners lose the payment. Despite the opposition, the Prime Minister insists it's necessary to fix the £22 billion financial shortfall.
A mother who went on holiday to Ibiza rather than attending her son's sentencing for his role in riots has been ordered to pay compensation to the victims.
Her 12-year-old son, one of the youngest involved in last month's riots, admitted violent disorder in Manchester. The 30-year-old mother was ordered to pay £1,200 in compensation, approximately the same price as her holiday, and to attend a 6-month parenting course.
Yeah, they should be just forced to pay for the damage, I think. And the King found himself in the middle of a scrum when he accepted a hug from a New Zealand women's rugby player. King Charles laughed as he was affectionately mobbed by the Black Ferns in the UK to take on England's Red Roses after he said, "Hug, why not?"
Isn't that lovely? I think that's such,
Yes.
it's such a difference from what we would have seen with the late Queen.
Like
As
she
much
was
as
like,
we
"Don't
loved
touch
her,
me."
yeah, nobody would dare touch her.
That's a bit like me, though, isn't it? In the makeup, don't touch my face. And I've got things on my face from my own brushes.
Oh, but I think King Charles is cuddlier.
He is, isn't he? Well, I love that picture of him and Camilla on the steps, and there was a picture of them from the back, and they just look like two little teddy bears, didn't they? They don't look too little. You just
Yeah,
thought,
with the
oh,
fly past going over their heads, that one, yeah. I know
That was
what
such
you
an iconic, such a sweet picture, and it kind of tells you a lot about them all. Remember, gbnews.com/your say. We want to hear your thoughts, but as Westminster Conservatives decide their new party head, voting is already underway to choose a new Scottish leader.
Yes, the outgoing leader, Douglas Ross, resigned his leadership and lost his Westminster seat this summer when a high-stakes election gambit failed to pay off.
Now it falls on Russell Finlay, Murdo Fraser or Megan Gallagher to lead Scottish Conservatives into the 2026 elections. Our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire, brings us up to speed.
These three candidates are planning a Scottish Tory comeback, but only one will be chosen to lead. Securing the backing of Scotland's 5 Tory MPs is Russell Finlay. A journalist of 30 years holding criminal gangs to account, Finlay's crosshairs have since fallen on the SNP. He's been a dominant voice opposing police funding cuts, gender ideology extremes and the divisive hate crime law. He says he wants to foster a renewed sense of ambition among Scottish Conservatives.
I'm sick and tired of socialist politicians in Scotland using the word Tory as a 4-letter word. I'm proud to be Conservative, and so many people across Scotland share our values and actually share our politics, even if they don't associate their values with our party. Why shouldn't there be a day when a Scottish Conservative leader takes the keys to Bute House?
Megan Gallagher has gone from zero to Tory hero in just 7 years, taking a council seat at 25, elected to Parliament within 4 years and taking over as deputy to kickstart her 30s. She was a frontline activist in the Indie Ref Better Together campaign, and she plans to spend more time championing the union and less time picking holes in independence.
I am a proud unionist. That will never, ever change. But one of the things that I think is really interesting, especially when you speak to young people, is how important business and trade is right across the UK. Scotland's highest trade partner is the rest of the United Kingdom, 60%. I think there's work to do, of course, to strengthen those bonds, but they're the bonds that I'm certainly proud of to stand on as being a Scottish Conservative.
Party faithful Murdo Fraser will be hoping second time's the charm after running against Ruth Davidson in 2011. Back then, he thought to split the party from the UK Conservatives, but that idea has since been shelved in favour of pushing Scottish Tories to fully embrace their Scottishness.
I'm not in favour of splitting the party up or breaking the Scottish Conservatives away from the UK Conservatives. I think it's important we're all part of the Conservative family. However, I do think the Scottish Conservatives need to speak with a distinctive Scottish voice. And if there are issues where we think the Scottish interest is being challenged, we should be prepared to speak out.
Ballots are already in the hands of party members who have until September 26 to register their pick, and the successful candidate will be announced the following day. Tony Maguire, GB News.
Well, that was Tony Maguire. Right, let's get an update with your weather with Annie Shuttleworth.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Another pretty cold feeling day to come for many of us. Still a few showers as well, but also some sunshine, particularly throughout the rest of this morning across eastern areas of England, once again, similar to yesterday morning, in fact, as well as parts of Scotland too. Now, the most frequent showers this morning will be across parts of North Wales. They'll push further inland through the rest of the day into the afternoon, and cloud will bubble up just about everywhere, bringing a risk of showers to most areas, but they'll be most frequent across coastal areas. And if you're exposed to this northerly Arctic wind, you will notice a chill in the air once again. As we head into this evening, though, this northerly wind does slowly start to shift to more of a northeasterly wind. So that means that showers will become more dominant across eastern parts of the country. Eastern areas of northern England seeing quite a few showers, but that does also mean that it will turn drier across western areas, particularly across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, where we've really seen the bulk of the showers for the past couple of days. Still a few showers inland here and there, but for most of us, it should stay fairly dry, though some showers will likely continue across the far north coast of southeastern England overnight tonight. Clearer skies will develop. We've got high pressure building in to end the week, so clear skies quite widely. Temperatures will fall away quite quickly this evening. It's likely to be the coldest start tomorrow morning of the week so far, and temperatures could be as low as around -4 degrees in northern areas, -1 or 2 across some rural areas further south, so potentially a grass frost out there for you on Friday morning, but also quite a lot of sunshine. And Friday is going to be a nice bright day. The sunshine should be much more longer lived through the day compared to the rest of the week, but we will see cloud building in from the northwest. You can see it moving into parts of Northern Ireland here, western Scotland, to end the day on Friday. But ahead of this area of rain, a fine day and temperatures climbing towards the mid to high teens.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway and the biggest cash prize that we've ever given away. £36,000 could be yours. That's like having an extra £3,000 tax-free in your bank account each month for an entire year. So have a think. What would you do if you were paying that for an entire year? Well, don't just dream about it. Here are all the details that you need to make it yours.
Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Right, still to come, we'll be joined by Health Secretary Wes Streeting in just a moment. Stay tuned. This is GB News with Nana and Ellie.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, Just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Right, now back to politics. We'll be crossing a line to Wes Streeting very shortly. But first of all, lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. What have we got, Ellie?
Yeah, Nick says the way that some people treat the NHS like a sacred cow that cannot be criticised is ridiculous. Benedict is spot on. The cheerleaders say it's the envy of the world, yet no other country in the world has this model. Well, on that note, let's speak about the reforms to the NHS with the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Wes Streeting, who joins us now. Very good morning to you, Mr. Streeting. Good to see you. Let's talk about this report because it's damning.
Good morning, and I strongly agree with what your viewers have just said.
Well, yes. So well, what do you make of it saying that the NHS is a sacred cow that cannot be criticised? I mean, this report is damning, isn't it? It is being criticised. It is troubling, but none of it is a surprise. The NHS has been in dire straits for years. People know that. If they've been sat in A&E for hours on end, if they've been waiting to get a doctor's appointment for 3 weeks, if they've been sitting on a waiting list for over a year for surgery, people know this. Why have we had a report for 8 weeks of 140 pages to tell us something that we already know? The NHS is in disarray. People need to see action now, don't they?
Well, they certainly do. There are some things in it that, even having shadowed health and social care in opposition and having now been the Health and Social Care Secretary for the last 9 weeks, there are some things in there that have shocked even me, that shocked Lord Darzi, who's been in the NHS for decades, and really point to why we need not just investment but reform. Because if you look at what's happened in our hospitals, for example, staffing numbers have grown significantly since 2019, but productivity has fallen. So we are paying more and getting less. Cancer in this country is more likely to be a death sentence than it is in other comparable countries. Adults and children are less healthy today than they were a decade ago. And the importance of this report, from my perspective, and why I commissioned it, is if you don't get the diagnosis right, you're less likely to get the right prescription. And I have got now, I think, both the mandate, the evidence from the doctor, the diagnosis from the doctor about the sickness of our NHS and the sickness of our society, and from the general election, a mandate and an instruction to deliver. And that is exactly what we are going to do. We've hit the ground running in the last 9 weeks, and I hope given people confidence about the action we will take, whether that's resolving the junior doctors' dispute so that we create the conditions in which the NHS can recover, or putting £100 million into employing 1,000 more GPs by the end of this year, so that we deal with both GP unemployment and the fact people can't get a GP appointment, and also making sure that we get to people earlier with health checks in communities and in the workplaces, better for patients, better for the taxpayers. Those are just some of the things we've done in the last 9 weeks. There is a hell of a lot more to do, and the reassurance I want to give to your viewers is we are not going to duck the difficult choices, we are not going to ignore hard truths, and we are not going to sweep the problems under the carpet. And as a Labour Party, we are not going to get into dewy-eyed nostalgia about what the NHS was when it was created 76 years ago. We are going to face up to the hard choices and challenges today. So the NHS is there for us for the next 76 years, and we deal with the awful situation we see today, where those who can afford it are paying to go private because the NHS isn't there for them, and those who can't afford it are left behind.
OK, so, yeah, most people would agree with what you said. That's exactly right. You should be doing that. So where are you going to make the savings? Because there are a lot of people in the NHS being paid a lot of money. I mean, for example, I'm just wondering, I mean, do you know how much the highest paid person in the NHS is being paid and what they do?
Well, look, the highest paid people in the NHS, and whether that's the chief executive of NHS England, who's got a large salary and pensions package, or consultants who are some of the highest paid people in the NHS, they are paid highest salaries, that's true. They do bear an enormous amount of personal responsibility and risk, and I think you've always got to get the balance right, especially in the public sector, of making sure you can get the very best people and they don't come cheap.
Okay, so
and pay them
it's actually
to the risk, but fundamentally
Wes, let me just
that's
tell you
not,
who it is.
to be honest, if I can be just be clear about this, a few salaries at the top are not at the heart of the NHS's financial challenges. We've got to deal with the fundamentals.
Wes, the reason I'm saying that is because it's actually a talent manager on £520,000, £500 a year. What I'm asking really is where are you going to redirect the funding, because that's the issue. There are so many managers, over 2,000 managers on six-figure salaries. You've got £300 to £400 million being spent each year on health tourism. So what I think people want to hear is the NHS, we've all agreed the NHS gets loads of money. It's spending it very badly. What are you going to do about health tourism? And also the bloated system of managers who are being paid an absolute fortune, where the people at the front line are being paid less. What are you going to do about that, those issues?
We are going to wage a war on waste, and what's been interesting to me in the last few years is that the anger about waste in the NHS isn't just felt by patients who get letters through the door for an appointment that was yesterday, because of, we're still running on paper and postage and stamps in the 21st century in the NHS. It's also the staff who are working in the system with creaking IT, outdated technology, and you're right, in terms of management in the NHS, I mean, one of the things that Lord Darcy says is that it's not so much that there are too many managers, is that we need better managers, and we need good management in the right places, and that's part of the reform that we need. We do need to do 3 big shifts out of hospitals into communities, so people can find it easier, for example, to get a GP appointment. Better for them, but also better for the taxpayer, because it costs 40 quid for a GP appointment, 400 quid in A&E. We've got to deal with that. The shift from analogue to digital, so we've got the latest treatments, technology, but also the IT systems that mean that we can deal with things like appointments, making it easier for patients to choose and book at the touch of a button in the health service, as we do in so many other aspects of our lives, and also shift from treating sickness to actually preventing illness in the first place. And with UK life sciences and medical technology, we've got some really game-changing stuff coming down the track that will enable us to give far more personalised support for patients, diagnosing earlier, treating faster, again, better for patients, better value for the taxpayers. So I'm not going to duck the difficult reform issues. And on things like health tourism, where we've got people taking the mick, we will tackle that. And I want to reassure your viewers about that too. We are going to wage war on waste, and not just assume that the answer to the NHS is more money without reform. Because if we did that, we'd be spending a hell of a lot of money and not seeing the impact for it. And if you're in any doubt about that, look at what Darcy said about growth in staff since 2019 versus falling productivity. We can't go on like this. The country can't afford it.
And Mr. Streeting, how is the biggest reform in NHS history going to be paid for? Because we keep hearing about this £22 billion black hole, don't we? Of which, just to be clear, £9 billion of that was for above-inflation pay rises to public sector workers, which was the choice of the Labour government, almost half of that £22 billion. We keep hearing about that, and we're also talking about these promises of not taxing working people. So where's the money going to come from?
Well, the Chancellor will set that on the spending review, but let me deal directly with the criticism you've just made about pay. On the junior doctors dispute, which had been rumbling for well over a year, and where my predecessor hadn't even met the junior doctors since March, we'd spent well over £1 billion on the costs of strike action and the consequences of more than 1 million delayed and cancelled operations, appointments and procedures. I mean, that we've spent more on the costs of strikes and the cost of failure than on actually solving the dispute. That's the thing that really frustrates me about what we walked into, is you see examples of that where the Tories talk tough but spent recklessly, and we're not going to go back to the Conservative bad old ways of unfunded spending commitments, unfunded tax cuts, more borrowing, and actually people ending up being stung in their pockets with higher taxes. That is why, and I know it's tough and it's not always going to be popular, but that's why Rachel Reeves hasn't ducked the fact there's a £22 billion black hole, and we are making the tough choices to plug that gap. It's like any sickness, and I think about the sickness in the NHS, the sickness in our society, and the sickness in our economy and public finances. The medicine doesn't always taste good, but it's a damn sight better than the alternative. And if we duck these difficult decisions and people were left paying the price of failure over the course of this Parliament and for the longer term, people would not forgive us. That was the Conservative way. It's not the Labour way, and it's not how we're going to govern the country.
Well, let's hope. Thank you very much. That a lot of people will be singing from the same hymn sheet as you in terms of improving the NHS. Let's hope that the Labour government work very hard as well and also focus on people like Jazz Athwell, who is a dodgy landlord who is part of the Labour Party, and everyone's sort of gone quiet about that. Wes Streeting, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, it's time to go through all the latest sports news with broadcaster Aidan McGee. That sounds very formal, doesn't it, Aidan?
It does,
broadcaster.
It does, indeed.
Shall we start with Ronaldo?
Yeah,
What's he had to say?
Well, look, I mean, it's a bit of a broadside against the manager, Erik ten Hag. Now, let's be clear, he's talking about Manchester United, Nana, but he left Man United a couple of years ago. He was edged out by Erik ten Hag. I don't know if you remember an interview he gave a couple of years ago to Piers Morgan where he said that Man United is outdated, it hasn't moved with the times. The gym is still the same as it was when he left in 2009. The chefs are still the same, the food's still the same. The club is, to all intents and purposes, stuck in a time warp. Well, he's been on Rio Ferdinand's podcast yesterday. There's been drips of it feeding out in the last 24 hours or so. It's going to be out in full on Thursday. And he said that as the Man United coach, you can't just get away with saying we haven't got the right mentality to win trophies. That doesn't cut it when you're the biggest football club in the world. I'll come to their losses in a minute, Ellie, but they turned over £662 million the other day. They should be doing more than this. They still managed to make a loss. And so you have to wonder what's behind Cristiano Ronaldo's motives. Well, clearly there is an axe to grind with Erik ten Hag. He's fed up with him. He was edged out of the club. There was a battle of egos. Ronaldo came off worse, and now he's in Saudi Arabia now winning, I say he's winning trophies, but it's more like he's winning cash, to be honest with you. And he scored his 901st goal the other day. But look, we're harping back to a time 15, 16 years ago when United were extremely successful.
I remember.
They've had I wouldn't say an awful start to the season. They lost their first match, but then they lost their two after that. They've got Southampton this weekend. And it's just at this time of when you've announced the losses, when you've not made a great start to the season, and I don't like to use the word former legend because you're either a legend or you're not, but a former hero of the club issuing a broadside like this, it's not what they want right now.
So what about Gareth Southgate? I mean, he said the time was right for him to step down as England manager. I mean, I thought he already had. He has. Why is he saying this? He said he's no regrets about the 8 years. We don't, but it would have been nice if they won something.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, look, he obviously he gave an interview directly after the match, but he's not spoken in public apart from when he issued a statement on his resignation a couple of months ago, almost immediately after the tournament. But he was at a charity event yesterday over in Canary Wharf, which commemorated 9/11, and yeah, he did a round of interviews with all the usual suspects, and he said, look, people would judge me on the fact that I didn't win a trophy. We all watched the Euros. We found it a bit cumbersome, a bit labouring at time, wasn't it? They got to the edge of the box and they sort of passed sideways. But he said, look, you have to consider where we were when we took over. We were in a bad situation back in 2016. We've got to 2 finals, 1 abroad, 1 at home. People would judge me on the fact that we didn't quite get over the line. But nonetheless, it was still a great ride.
Aidan McGee, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
We'll see you in the next hour. Right, do stay with us. We're going through the papers next with Charlie Rowley and Emma Wolfe.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
But let's get stuck in. Prince Harry, he's consulted former aides about a possible partial return to the UK as he seeks to repair his public image, that is according to the Daily Mail.
Who wants him? I'm sorry.
This is, of course, he's got his book Spare.
Yeah,
The paperback comes out later this year. Now, he's not updating it, but he'll want to promote it.
Yeah, absolutely.
He says he's not doing any interviews, but we're talking about him now, we're talking about Spare.
Yeah.
And is he going to come back with his wife? What about the children? Because apparently it's not safe for his wife and children in this country, according to Harry, even though he took his wife to Colombia, which is much less safe than Britain, in my view.
It's absurd. Anyway, he was able to attend his uncle's funeral quite easily.
He did.
Nobody knew he was coming. He said he wasn't, and then he did. And he was perfectly safe.
And he would have had the same security as every other member of the royal family who attended that event.
Yeah.
But, of course, he didn't speak to his brother at the funeral.
No, he wouldn't, would he?
So if he's trying to fix it, honestly, a funeral is where you should put all differences aside because it's not about you, it's about respect to the person, the family of the person who's gone, which was his uncle. It was his... Diana's sister's husband had died. So, and they didn't speak. They didn't speak in the church, they didn't speak when they left the church. Incredible, isn't it?
It's awful because that moment is when you realise that we are all mortal. And at that point, all other things should transcend that, but not...
Well, this move is being branded as Operation Bring Harry In From the Cold, because apparently he's a bit fed up with his life in Montecito. Does that mean with his wife?
I don't know.
Oh, no. Apparently he's dissatisfied with advice from his American-based image expert.
Well, they've had about 10 of them, haven't they? They're on to their number 11.
GB News, the People's Channel.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Fermanagh, the A32 remains closed along Forthill Street, off the A4 Dublin Road in Enniskillen after a fire. In East Yorkshire, Beverley Road in Hull is closed each way between the Howarth Arms traffic lights and Alexandra Road after an accident. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, the inside lane's closed southbound. Someone's broken down at junction 13 at Bedford. It's sloped towards and past there. In London, Seven Sisters Road is closed each way between Amherst Park at Finsbury Park and Manor House because of a burst water main. A number of buses are having to divert as a result. And in Wiltshire, the A4 is closed in both directions between the Avebury turnoff at West Kennet and Fifield after an accident yesterday afternoon. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good morning. Right, let's take a look at some of the newspapers' front pages. Headlines. You start, Ollie. I think you should do that.
Let's start with the Daily Telegraph, shall we? It leads with the NHS. They say does less despite record funding.
The Daily Mail, which reports NHS must reform or die, says the Prime Minister.
The Financial Times claims that Trump camp fights to regain footing after Harris delivers blows in debate.
In the Daily Express headlines, no more sticking plasters, it's reform or die for the NHS.
And finally, the Metro headlines, after 33 years, I'm innocent.
Well, joining us to go through what's making the news is Charlie Rowley and Emma Wolfe. Right, I'm going to start. Shall we have a quick chat about what Wes Streeting said? Because he had lots of, the pill might be bad, but the medicine, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, this torturous metaphor about, you know, we've got the diagnosis and now the doctor needs to treat us and it might be a bitter pill to swallow, la, la, la. We get it. You're the health secretary. The NHS is in a state. I mean, yes, he speaks sense, but I don't think he says anything new. I don't think this report, I mean, it's been heavily trailed. I don't think this report tells us anything that we don't know. We know that, look, we're spending more and more on less and less. As he said, there's more staff and lower productivity. Obesity is growing. The pay and pensions of the chief executives are growing. The nation is getting sicker. It's in a terrible state. We do a lot worse than other European countries. We're spending a lot more than other European countries. We had a complete disaster during lockdowns. We had a COVID-only service. We basically let people die. We let people die if it wasn't COVID. People are still dying from undiagnosed cancers, untreated cancers. The NHS is in a terrible state. This thing about reform or die, what does that actually mean? Are they going to pull the plug on the NHS?
They're not going to do that, are they?
What do they actually mean? Where's the money coming from?
Charlie Rowley.
Well, it was extraordinary, wasn't it? You know, and your fact that, you know, the highest paid person in the NHS is some sort of talent who?
Talent manager.
What?
£500,000. He was saying there's high paid consultants and this and that, so actually it's a talent manager.
You know,
it's a talent manager.
This money, you know, should be going to the front line of services to get through that backlog that obviously was created by COVID. But what's more is that you can't just offer or cave into the unions, who are asking, by the way, 35% when the Tories were in. They got about 22%, and talk about how that is now going to reform the NHS at the very same time when you're taking away the winter fuel allowance from some of the most vulnerable people in our society, who will end up inevitably having to go into the NHS, having to use the service because they're freezing, because they haven't got the ability to heat their homes. This is, this is crackers.
As if basic body temperature isn't a major health issue for elderly, vulnerable people.
I mean, people will be... I don't want to sort of labour the point too much. I mean, I'm sure you have someone else to rebut, Wes Streeting, but, people will be sitting at home thinking that they've elected... Well, not if they've elected them, but anyway, they've ended up with a government that hasn't got the first clue about what it's doing when it comes to the public finances. It is paying out to its union paymasters. Of course you need to reform the NHS. There are so many issues that we all know, and all the diagnosis, the quote there, that Wes has articulated. As Emma says, it's not things that we don't already know. But I'm glad they've identified it. I hope they sort it out. But, the idea that we're paying more and getting less... at the same time, where there's only going to be an increase in the backlog, at the same time of hitting the most vulnerable in our society even harder, I think people will be very, very worried, to say the least.
And people will be very, very worried about how all of this is going to be paid for, because that wasn't answered by Wes Streeting.
That wasn't. And what's depressing, Charlie, is that report, which is an important report written by a Labour stooge, basically, is really actually about blaming the last 14 years of the Conservative government. We know that. We've heard that. We've heard that almost constantly for the last 10, 11 weeks from this new Labour administration. We know that you're blaming the last 14 years of the Tory government. We've got to move on now. You've got to set out your stall in how we pay for this.
Because exactly, because the very funny is, they've fallen into the trap of paying unions and paying, the doctors an increase in salary. And I'm not against, obviously, paying more if the money is there and if when productivity is falling, and yet they're not seeing even more people, and yet there will be more strikes to come. If they haven't reformed the service before there's been that increase in pay, then the unions will hold the government to ransom.
And do you remember that quite startling promise from Starmer during the election campaign? 40,000 new appointments, was it every week? Where are they? From day one, there will be 40,000 new appointments. Have you tried getting an appointment with your GP recently? Things like that.
It's taken me 3 weeks.
Exactly, 3 weeks.
I've been to see a doctor today and it's taken me 3 weeks.
Exactly. Well, there you go. And those kind of promises, you cannot just fling them out there and then not deliver.
Well, should
we're
we
now
quickly,
a couple of months in.
Should we very quickly touch on Harris and Trump? If anyone saw the debates and Democrats are feeling triumphant, did they win, really, that one?
Well, I did watch it, funny enough. I did, yes.
What did you think?
I objectively, I thought it was a bit bizarre, actually, to be perfectly honest with you. But Donald Trump, right from the get-go, so when they both came out and shook hands, I think Kamala Harris was unsettled. I think she was over-prepared, and I think Donald Trump was under-prepared.
Yes.
And briefly, 10 seconds from you, Emma.
Well, I thought Kamala did better than I was expecting, so I think it's even Stevens, but I agree with your previous commentator that I still think Trump will win.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that as well. Well, interesting stuff.
Yeah, and we'll have more from you two in the next hour. Sorry, that was brief. We had a long time with Wes Streeting.
Well, we didn't want. I could have had longer. Actually, I wanted to have longer.
Yeah, it would have been nice. But
briefly from Betty,
team was saying to wrap up. Wasn't it?
Well, Betty briefly says that, so it's the oldies' fault that the NHS is in a mess. Of course it is. The oldies are blamed for everything. Rubbish. Yeah, we really didn't have enough time to get into that. But listen, stay with us. Loads more still to come here on GB News. Keep your thoughts coming. GB News /your say. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Another pretty cold feeling day to come for many of us. Still a few showers as well, but also some sunshine, particularly throughout the rest of this morning across eastern areas of England, once again, similar to yesterday morning, in fact, as well as parts of Scotland too. Now, the most frequent showers this morning will be across parts of North Wales. They'll push further inland through the rest of the day into the afternoon, and cloud will bubble up just about everywhere, bringing a risk of showers to most areas, but they'll be most frequent across across coastal areas. And if you're exposed to this northerly Arctic wind, you will notice a chill in the air once again. As we head into this evening, though, this northerly wind does slowly start to shift to more of a northeasterly wind. So that means that showers will become more dominant across eastern parts of the country. Eastern areas of northern England seeing quite a few showers, but that does also mean that it will turn drier across western areas, particularly across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, where we've really seen the bulk of the showers for the past couple of days. Still a few showers inland here and there, but for most of us, it should stay fairly dry, though some showers will likely continue across the far north coast of southeastern England overnight tonight. Clearer skies will develop. We've got high pressure building in to end the week, so clear skies quite widely. Temperatures will fall away quite quickly this evening. It's likely to be the coldest start tomorrow morning of the week so far, and temperatures could be as low as around -4 degrees in northern areas, -1 or 2 across some rural areas further south, so potentially a grass frost out there for you on Friday morning, but also quite a lot of sunshine. And Friday is going to be a nice bright day. The sunshine should be much more longer lived through the day compared to the rest of the week, but we will see cloud building in from the northwest. You can see it moving into parts of Northern Ireland here, western Scotland to end the day on Friday. But ahead of this area of rain, a fine day and temperatures climbing towards the mid to high teens.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Listening on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding in Fermanagh. The A32 Fort Hill Street remains closed each way between the A4 Dublin Road and Drumclay Link at Enniskillen after a fire. In Lincolnshire, the A15 is blocked each way by an accident at Boothby Grafo, causing delays. The M40 in Warwickshire is blocked northbound by an accident between junctions 12 and 13 from Gaydon to Bishop's Tatchbrook, causing queues. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, the inside lane's closed southbound where someone's broken down. At junction 13 at Bedford, it's very slow towards and past there. In London, the A503 Seven Sisters Road is closed southbound from Amherst Park to Green Lanes by Manor House Underground Station because of a burst water main. And on the M26 in Kent, it's taking 20 minutes in westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good morning. The NHS does less work. That's despite being handed record amounts of money.
A landmark report has found that it is in critical condition with surging waiting lists, poor cancer performance and a struggle to access care.
The Prime Minister says the health service must reform or die. Earlier we spoke to Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Wes Streeting.
We are not going to ignore hard truths and we are not going to sweep the problems under the carpet.
And then there were four. The Tory leadership race continues with Robert Jenrick now in the lead and Tom Tugendhat trailing.
Harry's visa mystery. The case over whether he lied about drug use on his application has been quietly closed by a judge in a sealed ruling.
Fight night for presidential hopefuls. We look at the world's reaction to the first debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris.
And following that fiery face-off, Taylor Swift endorsed Harris. So we're asking, should stars get involved in politics?
And it's almost time for the National Cat Award. We'll be meeting some of our formidable feline friends and bringing stories of heroism and companionship.
Good morning. As former England boss Gareth Southgate reflects on his 8 years as England boss, his interim successor Lee Carsley insists the role is not the impossible job. In tennis, Britain make a winning start to their Davis Cup campaign, and in cricket, England suffer a T20 defeat to Australia.
Good morning. An even colder night to come tonight, but it should warm up as we head into the weekend. Find out all the details with me a little later on.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Ellie Costello.
I'm Nana Aquir, and this is GB News Breakfast. Right, well, lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. This one from Nick. He says, the way some people treat the NHS like a sacred cow that cannot be criticised is ridiculous. Benedict is spot on. He was on earlier. The cheerleaders say it's the envy of the world, yet no other country in the world has this model. It is also ironic that when doctors strike, they say that they're being forced to go and work abroad for better paying conditions, yet the systems they go and work in are the very systems which were suggested for implementing here. They fight tooth and nail against. Yeah.
Harris says, don't worry about the NHS. Labour will fund it by removing single-person discount on council tax, stopping free prescriptions, removing pensioners' bus passes and by moving migrants into five-star hotels. Well, do keep your views coming in on any of the stories that we're talking about this morning, gbnews.com/yoursay. And we're talking about this, of course, because the Prime Minister has said that the NHS must reform or die. It's a report by former Labour Health Minister Lord Darzi, who's described the state of the NHS as dire and in critical condition. The report finds that failings in care has led to the deaths of thousands of patients a year.
Big picture finding is the NHS is in a serious, critical condition, but the vital signs are normal, which will suggest that we can do something about this. To do it well, we need to engage the whole staff, patients, the public, the political leadership, all aligned to make that change happen as quickly as we can, because we can't wait.
Keir Starmer is set to make a speech on the biggest re-imaging of the NHS later on this morning. He'll say that funding will be moved away from unproductive hospitals, but will insist that taxes will not be raised to provide more funding.
Well, how is it all going to be paid for? That's the million-dollar question in all of this. Journalist and political commentator Benedict Spence joins us now. And what do you make of all of this, Benedict? Because this isn't anything that we didn't already know. None of this comes as a surprise, but it does give Labour a mandate now, doesn't it, for this reform that they've been promising us for a long time?
It does. The report, the remit of the report was, of course, to sort of identify various problems, but not to identify solutions. So it's going to be very convenient for the government to be able to say, look, all of these things are going sort of dreadfully wrong, and we have the solutions, even if an external independent analyst hasn't necessarily come up with them, and possibly they, if they're quite sort of ideologically driven as well. I mean, I noticed that lots of people who are sort of writing in were asking, how is it that this is going to be paid for? I think that that's going to be sort of the key thing. I don't think anybody is in any doubt that the system as it currently stands is creaking. It's not working very well. This is, of course, partly as a result of COVID and lockdown policies and the sort of the various stresses that were placed on NHS departments, and the fact that some NHS departments weren't actually treating people in a timely fashion, even though they possibly could have done, but also because we have an aging population that is disproportionately weighing more on the system. And actually, if you juxtapose this with the fact that the country isn't creating enough wealth in the first place to pay for this very expensive public service, it shouldn't really come as much as a surprise that things aren't going quite to plan. But of course, payment is going to be the sort of the million-dollar question. Is it going to be by increasing taxes? Is it going to be taking money away from other government budgets? I mean, let's be clear, what Rachel Reeves has been sort of broadly promising people is a new form of austerity, which is ironic given that the Labour Party has spent the last 14 years saying that austerity is the reason why we find ourselves in the economic mess that we do. But that is what she's promising. Is this going to extend to taking money away from other government budgets to give to the NHS? Remains to be seen. Or will it just be tax rises that'll end up cutting off growth?
Well, the conditions for austerity were on Labour's watch, actually, and as I remember, there was no money left, and the Conservatives have been trying to supposedly fix it. But could they not simply get the savings by spending less on things like health tourism and making sure that people who come here, if they are going to use our services, pay for them? I mean, it's 300 to 400 million. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but it's not going to completely touch the side, given that actually the NHS wastes a lot of money on all sorts of other things as well. You know, if you to take that 300 million and give it to an NHS trust, I'm sure that they'd find very good ways to use it that didn't necessarily cure anybody of their ailments. Although that is certainly, you're right, that is one thing that could be addressed. And, you know, when you sort of go through all the various different bits of waste, you would be able to make some quite substantial savings. And that is, I think, going to be one of the things that Sir Keir Starmer and the government are probably going to have to lead on. Wes Streeting, before the election, made a big sort of song and dance of going around the world, looking at different health systems and finding ways that efficiency could be built more rigorously into the system in order to save money. That will probably cost a lot of money in the short term to, you know, things like updating IT systems that aren't fit for purpose. But that's going to be an important part of it, certainly. But the difficulty is, as the population continues to age, the NHS is only ever going to be playing catch up unless something quite radical is done. And what you will almost certainly see as part of this, I suspect, is going to be intervention. It's going to be sort of preventative measures. It's going to be things like increases on fast food, increases in price, taxes on things like cigarettes and alcohol. We're already, of course, learning, aren't we, about more moves to perhaps curb the uses of cigarettes, even in outdoor spaces. There'll be a lot of this sort of nanny state stuff, I suggest, in quite a scolding tone, to tell people, look, you're putting pressure on your NHS and you are part of the problem. You're going to have to cut out this, that, or the other, or you're going to have to live a healthier life. Whether or not that's going to work, especially if we're talking about people who are already elderly, I have my doubts. So, as usual, it's probably going to be the younger working population that bears the brunt.
And Benedict, it is important to reflect as well. We're expecting Keir Starmer today to set out his stall to talk about a 10-year plan. So that's 2 terms, isn't it? He's not going to get this done in just the 1 5-year term.
Exactly. You're right to point this out. He's already said this about fixing the prison system. He's going to say this about literally everything. You find him a problem, he'll say it'll take 10 years to fix the Tory mess. You know, it's not unfair to point out that the Labour Party has inherited a very bad situation and that he was able to sort of stand, Sir Keir Starmer, on promising sort of that quiet competency that perhaps in the latter years of the Conservative government they weren't offering. Whether or not people are prepared right now, a couple of months after the election, to go, oh yeah, sure, 10 years, sounds like nothing, that'll be fine, I'm not so sure at all. I think people will want to see very tangible changes in the short term. They'll want to see improvements in services, or they'll want to see an improvement in their economic outlook before they're prepared to even countenance a second term. Because let's remember, although they did win the general election, they did not win it at a canter. Their vote share was reduced from even what it was under Jeremy Corbyn. People are not enthusiastic about Sir Keir Starmer. He is Prime Minister because he promised some stability. Thus far, with rioting and the promise of taxes going up, I'm not sure we've seen a lot of that.
No, I don't think we have. Benedict Spence, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. It's coming up to 10 minutes after 7 o'clock. Good morning if you've just tuned in.
Now, the case over whether Prince Harry lied about drug use on his visa application to the United States has been quietly closed by the judge in a sealed ruling.
Judge Carl Nichols filed the order in Washington after reviewing the Prince's US immigration documents for 4 months after the Duke admitted to taking cocaine and other drugs in his memoir Spare. So people have been asking, how was he able to obtain a US visa?
And in other royal news, Prince Andrew, who is still living at Royal Lodge in Windsor, has been told to pay costs for the upkeep and security or move out.
Well, to discuss this further, royal correspondent and writer Michael Cole joins us now. Michael, good morning. Good morning. Look, it's gone so quiet. It's gone so quiet on the Prince Harry front with regard to the visa, and now it's just simply closed down. That's not fair. Most people in that position, if they weren't perhaps royal, would be sort of seeing, would probably be in quite a bit of trouble. Why has this all gone away?
In football parlance, Nana and Ellie, this is definitely a result for Prince Harry. Judge Carl Nichols has sealed the file on his application to have residence in the United States. Now, on that form you have to fill in, there is a question which says, do you use drugs or have you ever been a drug addict? Tick the box. Now, if people tick the yes box, I have, normally, there are exceptions, but normally the application would be refused and the person would not be allowed to become a resident in the United States. Now, the judges sealed that, which will probably infuriate the Heritage Foundation, a right-wing pressure group, which has been pushing the Department of Homeland Security to have this matter released, because the Americans do take these matters very, very, very seriously. And if Prince Harry has been given an exception, or perhaps he hasn't filled in the form correctly, well, we don't know because the file is sealed. It's very important because Prince Harry, his whole future now is tied up in California. His daughter, Prince Lilibet, was born there, and his future is very much there. So if he were to be refused an extension of his visa to remain, the question would arise, where would he go? Back to Canada, where he was before? Back to this country? Well, of course, he could do that. It's a difficult situation, but for him, it's a move forward, definitely a win for Team Sussex.
And Michael, whilst we have you, can we talk about the troubles of Prince Andrew? Because they're not gone very far. In fact, there's more of them now. There's a new Amazon Prime series, isn't there, called A Very Royal Scandal, which documents that November 2019 interview on Newsnight. How is that going to go down for the royal family? And also we're hearing about this ultimatum that the King has given Prince Andrew about Royal Lodge in Windsor.
Yeah, the King seems very determined that his younger brother should either take over the responsibility for upkeep of the house, of course, which he has a 75-year lease on, but also for his own security. And that's going to be a very big number. At the moment, the King is paying for all that, but the contract for the people who've been providing the security at Royal Lodge, that runs out very soon, and the King says he's not going to continue to pay it. Quite clearly, what there is pressure for the Duke of York, who actually lives in a rather bizarre arrangement with his ex-wife at Royal Lodge, a glorious white wedding cake of a house in the middle of Windsor Great Park, to move from there, which is a mansion once lived in by the old Queen Mother, we remember well, over to Frogmore Cottage in the shadow of Windsor Castle. A smaller place, but to most people, a very luxurious one, which was completely renovated to the taste of Meghan Markle when it was thought that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex would live there before they made their rapid exit to Canada and then on to California, which may have been her destination of choice all along. So a lot of problems for Prince Andrew. His brother is very intent on this. Since he became king, he's shown no hesitation in using the great authority which comes of being the head of state. And I'm sure there have been conversations about this at Balmoral, where both of them have been at times during this early autumn, as we call it.
Well, listen, Michael Cole, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to talk to you. He's a royal correspondent and a writer.
Now, at 14 minutes past 7, let's take a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
Rachel Reeves has defended claiming taxpayer-funded expenses for heating her second home. Oh, yes, that's after the government's plans to cut winter fuel payments for pensioners cleared in the Commons.
In yesterday's exchanges at Prime Minister's questions, Rishi Sunak pushed Sir Keir Starmer for details on the impact of the cuts, which will see 10 million pensioners lose the payment. Despite the opposition, the Prime Minister insists it's necessary to fix a £22 billion financial shortfall.
A mother went on holiday to Ibiza rather than attending her son's sentencing for his role in the riots, has been ordered to pay compensation to the victims.
Her 12-year-old son, one of the youngest involved in last month's riots, admitted violent disorder in Manchester. The 30-year-old mother was ordered to pay £1,200 in compensation, approximately the same price as her holiday, and attend a 6-month parenting course.
And the King found himself in the middle of a scrum when he accepted a hug from a New Zealand women's rugby player. King Charles laughed as he was affectionately mobbed by the Black Fens in the UK to take on England's Red Roses. After he said, hug, why not?
Aww. Now, let's have a look at the weather with Annie Shuttleworth.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Another pretty cold feeling day to come for many of us. Still a few showers as well, but also some sunshine, particularly throughout the rest of this morning across eastern areas of England, once again similar to yesterday morning, in fact, as well as parts of Scotland too. Now, the most frequent showers this morning will be across parts of North Wales. They'll push further inland through the rest of the day into the afternoon, and cloud will bubble up just about everywhere, bringing a risk of showers to most areas, but they'll be most frequent across coastal areas. And if you're exposed to this northerly Arctic wind, you will notice a chill in the air once again. As we head into this evening, though, this northerly wind does slowly start to shift to more of a northeasterly wind. So that means that showers will become more dominant across eastern parts of the country. Eastern areas of northern England seeing quite a few showers, but that does also mean that it will turn drier across western areas, particularly across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, where we've really seen the bulk of the showers for the past couple of days. Still a few showers inland here and there, but for most of us, it should stay fairly dry, though some showers will likely continue across the far north coast of southeastern England overnight tonight. Clearer skies will develop. We've got high pressure building in to end the week, so clear skies quite widely. Temperatures will fall away quite quickly this evening. It's likely to be the coldest start tomorrow morning of the week so far, and temperatures could be as low as around -4 degrees in northern areas, -1 or 2 across some rural areas further south, so potentially a grass frost out there for you on Friday morning, but also quite a lot of sunshine. And Friday is going to be a nice bright day. The sunshine should be much more longer lived through the day compared to the rest of the week, but we will see cloud building in from the northwest. You can see it moving into parts of Northern Ireland here, western Scotland, to end the day on Friday. But ahead of this area of rain, a fine day and temperatures climbing towards the mid to high teens.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
But it is now time for the Great British Giveaway. Now, that's the biggest cash prize we've ever given away. £36,000 could be yours. That's like having an extra £3,000 tax-free in your bank account every month, and that's for an entire year. What would you do? What would you pay off? Well, don't just dream about it. Here is how you could be the winner.
This is your chance to win.
Now, still to come, as Taylor Swift endorses Kamala Harris for president, we're asking this morning, should celebrities get involved in politics? That's our debate next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel. Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. Now, pop sensation Taylor Swift has endorsed Kamala Harris for president following the head-to-head debate. In a post on Instagram, she said, "I'll be casting my vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the 2024 presidential election. I'm voting for Kamala Harris because she fights for the rights and causes that I believe need a warrior to champion them."
But we're asking, should celebrities get involved in politics? I mean, they've got a lot of sway. Joining us to discuss this is political consultant Emma Burnell and former UKIP leader Neil Hamilton, not Harrison, crikey. All right, so Emma Burnell, Taylor Swift, massive audience. She really is very influential, and this could encourage others to vote potentially, and obviously that's probably her intention. But do you think that people like this should actually be getting involved in this way?
Yes, why not? They have the same democratic rights as you and I, the same free speech rights as you and I. They have every right to say how they feel about the world they live in. That they have a larger audience than I do might make me regretful, but it doesn't mean that they should have their rights curtailed.
Well, what about, OK, so let's just bring it back to the UK. Carol Vorderman, she went on and on. She set up a tactical voting site and everything. Now she's asking Keir Starmer to apologise, in particular for the winter fuel. She's not happy. And this is obviously this is the pitfall of doing all that, pushing your audience to do that, and then when the person you get in there does something really silly.
Yes, but that's the same for anybody who says, this is how I'm voting, I think you should join me. There are always going to be people who understand more or less about the process of politics, the fact that politics will always disappoint somebody somewhere sometime. But that doesn't mean that Carol Vorderman had no right to that voice in the election.
No, she's got egg on her face.
Neil Hamilton, let's bring you in, shall we? Former UKIP leader Neil Hamilton. What do you make of it? Should celebrities get involved in politics? Should they be endorsing presidential candidates?
Well, I mean, Taylor Swift is not exactly a philosopher queen, is she? I don't think anybody's ever really thought about her political views in the past. Obviously, she's a US citizen. She's got to vote in the presidential election. She's entitled to express her view. But I do get fed up with these limousine liberals with the billionaire lifestyle, their Montecito mansions, their private jets, their houses that are armed camps surrounded by security, and who has made her billions on the backs of the poor. I don't think she stratifies the ticket prices at her concerts according to people's ability to pay to get in. I think that these people who are absolute hypocrites really should keep quiet in order not to make fools of themselves, and I think she is. Now, I mean, California is effectively becoming a failed state. I mean, I lived in San Francisco 50 years ago. It was a wonderful city. Now, the city is a street crime, dossers, drug use on the streets, and the whole city is a mess and a shambles. And California is a place from which people are fleeing now to states like Texas and Florida, which have got lower tax rates and in a better business environment. So, I mean, Taylor Swift is really, I think, a bit of a joke.
Emma Burnell's been shaking her head and doing all sorts of expressions. Emma?
Well, not least because Taylor Swift votes in Pennsylvania, not California. Just because she's a celebrity doesn't mean she's actually from LA. It's quite a bizarre thing to, but she's sort of famously not Hollywood. So that's quite an odd assertion to start with. Look, if you want to talk about limousines and private jets and people who are very disconnected from the poor, I would start potentially with former celebrity, Apprentice host, Donald Trump. But, you know, criticising Taylor Swift for making a lot of money doesn't seem to be the particularly conservative position, which is bizarre. But then on the other hand, you know, she is... If she's going to take a public position, you can criticise her public position. I just think it's slightly bizarre to criticise a young woman for being incredibly successful in a country music, which is not a venue that's known to be particularly chock full of liberals.
Neil Hamilton?
We're not criticising Taylor Swift for making money, quite the opposite. I'm all in favour of people making money. And Taylor Swift is a brilliant businesswoman. We've seen that in the course of the last year. She's taken back control of her albums and you know, her backlist and so on, and restricts very carefully the way in which it can be used so that she can make even more money. That's great as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, blue-collar America is actually behind Donald Trump. There's no doubt about that. You look at the Rust Belt states, the states that he won in 2020, even though he lost the election, then, you know, those are the people that are the real America, in my view. The Hollywood liberals, maybe Taylor Swift isn't a Hollywood liberal, but the syndrome, the mindset is exactly the same. These are people who lead lives which are completely divorced from the ordinary citizen in America, and the Biden administration has been catastrophic for their crazy policies on climate change, same as in this country, which are bearing very heavily on the backs of the poorest, in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which involves spending trillions and trillions of taxpayers' money on renewable energy, is being paid for by those who are at the bottom end of the income scale. And the American economy is on point of tanking. The national debt is 126% of GDP. It's even higher than it is in this country, and getting far, far soon. The dollar could well be knocked off its perch as the world's anchor currency if this goes on for very much longer. So I don't know whether Taylor Swift has paid much attention to these issues in the course of her prognostications.
All right, Emma Burnell.
Well, I mean, we could talk about the American economy in depth, but I mean, I thought we were here to talk about whether politicians should or should not be celebrities. That's probably something you know more about than I do, or whether or not celebrity should be political. I just think, look, Taylor Swift has come from, you know, a fairly modest background, and she's kept her Southern roots. She's always stayed very country, as well as being experimental on lots of other music formats. And when you say she's out of touch with millions of Americans, I mean, millions of Americans are out of touch with each other, and that's a huge problem. America is incredibly divided. You say X type of voter likes Donald Trump and Y type of voter likes Hillary Clinton. It's not actually that clear cut. But unfortunately, what they really are is highly, highly polarised. And one of the things, actually, that you see, and you saw it when Taylor Swift played in England and in the UK, I saw people going to her gig of all ages, you know, men and women, all races. And I think that is something that she has that I think that perhaps neither Donald Trump, nor, to be fair, and I'm trying to be completely unbiased here, Kamala Harris, who obviously I would vote for if I was American, is the ability to bring America back together again. And I think that's something that Taylor Swift does really well. People love Taylor Swift across the political spectrum. People love Taylor Swift across the musical spectrum. And I think that's something we're missing a lot at the moment in our modern political conversation.
I think she seems like a nice person, but her music is diabolical.
Oh,
Emma Burnell and Neil Hamilton, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, you two.
Awful.
Thank you for your time.
That music's
terrible. No, I'll get you onto it. I'll get you onto it.
No, you've never. It's not going to happen.
We'll have a chat in the break.
I don't think that's
and I'll show you my
long
favourite
enough.
ones. Let us know what you think on that one. Should celebrities be endorsing politicians? gbnews.com/yoursay.
Right, well, as the Darcy review into the NHS is published today, Victoria Atkins MP, Shadow Health Secretary, has written to both the Health and Wealth Secretaries to raise serious concerns and questions on the Labour. That is on the way. But first, let's get an update with your sport. That's after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Fermanagh, the A32 remains closed each way along Fort Hill Street in Enniskillen after a fire. It's closed between the A4 Dublin Road and the Drumclay Link. In Northamptonshire, the A43 is blocked northbound. There's a problem between the Piketree turnoff and the Morsley Village turnoff near Broughton between Northampton and Kettering. There are delays in both directions. The M40 in Warwickshire is closed northbound from junction 12 at Gaydon to 14 at Leamington after an accident causing queues. Trains have been stopped between Milford Haven and Carmarthen after a freight train broke down at Haverford West. On the M26 in Kent, it's taking 20 minutes in westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. Very slow too on the clockwise M25 towards there. And Eurotunnel report a wait of up to an hour for passengers at Folkestone. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, good morning. It's time now to go through all the latest sports news with broadcaster Aidan McGee. Aidan.
Good morning to you both.
Right.
Morning.
Shall we start with Gareth Southgate?
Yeah, why not? I mean, he's been in quite a revisionist mood, really. I mean, he gave an interview immediately after the match when England lost the Euros against Spain 2 months ago, but we haven't heard from him since, apart from when he gave his resignation speech, which was done in over email or by a statement on the website. He's not actually spoken verbally, but he was at a charity event yesterday, commemorating the lives lost at 9/11 in 2001. And he was asked inevitably about how he reflects on his period as England manager. England have played, of course, twice in the last week or so. And he said, look, people are going to remember the fact that I didn't win, but you have to remember where we were when I took over in 2016. We were in disarray. The country had no hope in terms of players coming through. We didn't really have any kind of identity as a team. Sam Allardyce had literally had one game, so he didn't have a chance to put his stamp on the side. They had crashed out of Euro 2016. And he said that you have to consider progress. Any leader, and you'll have your own opinion on this in other walks of life, any leader has to judge their progress on where you were at the start, where you picked it up, and where you finished. And I think that he's probably got a point. 2 Euro finals, having not reached a final since 1966, is creditable, is noteworthy, but he had some outstanding players, didn't he? And we watched during the summer the amount of times they got to the edge of the box, they didn't seem to have a creative tool in their locker to try and unlock those defences, and it caused a lot of frustration, particularly to people who don't necessarily watch football loads. People looked at it and thought they could see what was going on with an untrained eye, and it caused a lot of rancour amongst the supporters because it seemed to be a missed chance. Meanwhile, Lee Carsley, his successor, the interim manager, if you like, has been in charge for 2 games, 2 wins out of 2. They haven't really faced anybody now, if I'm honest with you. I mean, they faced the worst Ireland team I've seen probably over 40 years, and Finland, who are bottom of the Nations League group. But there was a famous phrase quoted, Ellie, probably about November '93, when there was a documentary on about Graham Taylor and his spell in charge of England, and it was called The Impossible Job. Is this a job you can ever be successful at? It's like being the Prime Minister. You can't do right for doing wrong. Lee Carsley, quite understandably, I suppose after 2 wins, has said it's not the impossible job, it's a really good one. And, well, he might say that because he's still got some outstanding players and there's plenty to look forward to. And if he can be the man just to lift England over that final line, that final finishing line, there's immortality in it for him going forward, no question about that.
OK. Lee Carsley.
You mentioned him just now.
We're just on that now.
Yeah.
Let's look at the tennis then, shall we?
Yeah, tennis, I think it's really interesting because Billy Harris, does he mean anything to you? He didn't mean anything to me either.
No, never heard of him.
Until a few days ago. He's 29 years old and he's making a splash at the Davis Cup. David Cup, don't know what that is. with Team GB, there's a picture of him there. Jack Draper wasn't able to contribute because, although they're up against Finland, he's been fatigued, obviously, for his involvement in the US Open last week. He's 29 years old. He's driving to tournaments in vans until recently. Now, I can't recall anyone starting a professional or coming into this tennis as late as that in my time watching the sport.
I can't
29, and look, Cam Norrie was a late starter, but somebody I know saw this guy, Billy Harris, at Eastbourne in the summer, and so I'm going to watch out for him.
What's wrong with driving to the tournament in a van?
Nothing's wrong. It's just not. You wouldn't get that in modern tournaments because tennis is awash with money. Now, if you walk around anywhere around South West London during Wimbledon fortnight, or even during Queen's the week before, they've got laid-on sponsored cars laid on by the tournament, and that's if you're in the top 50, top 100, top 300 even.
It might be a really flashy van. It might be a van like a house.
I'll check out what's it. Yeah, it might have a wash basin, it might have a shower. It might have a little mini court where he can practice his serving, perhaps, you know. But look, he won his tie yesterday, and Team GB heading towards the knockout phase, it looks like.
Brilliant. Aidan, thanks very much. We'll see you in the next hour. Do stay with us. We'll be going through the papers with Emma Wolfe and Charlie Rowley. That's next.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Would you have Harry back with open arms? And this is Ian. Hi, Ian. Harry is unfortunately not well. He's an emotional wreck. Ian, you actually took the words out of my mouth. I remember when I was younger, queuing up for hours for West Ham tickets. I'm that sad. But at least I got the ticket. It was my ticket. They knew it was me, and there were no touts involved. It's Forever says Harry can stay away. He was so quick to condemn this country as racist and to trash the Queen and royal family's reputations. He should be banished and his titles removed. He has not earned the right to call himself anything with a royal title. Ooh, passionate. Since moving to the US with Meghan, the American dream has had a number of issues for him, I think it's fair to say. But if Harry was to return, would he be welcome? And could he make it up with William? Look, if Oasis, sorry I said the O word, have done it, can William and Harry?
Well, I think it's going to present a lot of challenges. I mean, I've got to be clear here. When it comes to reconciliation, if it's possible, obviously, to mend the rift with William, clearly that is to be welcomed. But as for Harry returning, what precisely would that mean? What precisely would Harry want? Because if it is in any sense a return to royal duties, you really got to be very, very careful with what you're dealing with. As far as the royal family are concerned, for goodness sake, reconciliation, yes, but actual work as a senior working royal is not, in my opinion.
So I always think it's quite funny listening to serious people talk seriously about
the royals, because it's not that serious, a lot of it. But actually, I think where I'm fascinated by them is that we can sort of see a bit of ourselves as a society and as individuals.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. Now, do we have Victoria Atkins with us, or are we going through the papers
She
first?
will be joining us
We're going to
very
start with the
soon.
papers, but we will be speaking to Shadow Health Secretary Victoria Atkins, who will be with us very shortly. Let's start with you, Emma. Emma Wolf and Charlie Rowley are with us again to go through the papers. Emma, this one making people very, very angry. Labour MPs, Rachel Reeves included, claiming thousands of pounds of support for her energy bills for her second home.
Cheek of it. Absolute cheek of it.
I can't, you know, there is so much anger still about this. We were just debating, weren't we, whether there's any chance of a U-turn on this from Labour. I don't think there is by now. But there is still so much anger. It's not going away. If anything, it's intensifying. People, I mean, the figures between sort of £3,000 and £4,000 in terms of what Rachel Reeves claimed. This is her statement. She says, being a constituency MP means that you have to have a house in London as well, of course, as living in your constituency, and that's the same for all MPs. But that does not wash. People are saying, hang on a minute, you have taken £300 a year from vulnerable elderly people, some of whom are on a basic state pension of, what, 11,000, 12,000, and you are claiming for a second home. People pointing out, why do you need to heat a second home if you're not there? Why are you claiming so much? People looking at their own salaries, which are, MP salaries, which for a cabinet minister, I think they're on over £90,000 a year. The anger here is just absolutely, as I say, intensifying.
Well, I mean, they should answer the questions, frankly, because it's. I think they shouldn't. Why do they need an allowance? They've got enough money.
Why are they claiming expensive?
Yeah, totally. And you know, then there's always a debate around whether actually do you pay MPs more and then sort of take away all the the expenses.
They've got loads of perks as well.
Yes, yeah, they're quite right. But I think, look, if you're going to go to the country and say, look, we've got to make difficult decisions, OK, make the difficult decisions. If you say that there is no money left, then, you know, the public will understand if you are in that situation. But what you can't do on the one hand is to say, oh, we've got to take all this money away from the most vulnerable. At the same time, pay out your union paymasters. At the same time, continue to claim, allowances for yourself on a second home when you're treating the public or impacting on them in the most, difficult way for the most vulnerable. There is just no strategy. There's no forward thinking. There is no honeymoon period, really. If you're all in this together, if it was Cameron and Osborne who did have to make difficult decisions, they did have to cut public spending, but everybody felt the pinch there. Everybody was under the spotlight. Every public service, every kind of penny that was being spent on from the public purse, was checked, and the economy did take a bit of a hit. But that's because we were all in it together. But this government, this Labour government, are clearly making it clear that we're not all in it together. It's one rule for one and one rule for another.
And surely you protect the vulnerable first.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are so many. It's just such a clear issue on this. There are so many kind of damaging stats, like a train driver gets around £300 a day. That is how much you're taking from pensions. Those kind of obvious headline, stark choices. And as you say, Charlie, they've said again and again, we've got to make tough choices. This is about, starting on the road to recovery, all of that. Well, the tough choices, unpopular decisions. Stop talking about unpopular decisions. This is a morally bankrupt decision, and you're hitting the vulnerable first and not getting...
Yes.
And look, MPs and cabinet ministers are in warm offices all day long.
With
pensioners are in cold homes all day long.
And the key word in all of that is choice. The Labour government will say till they're blue in the face that actually they've got to make this decision. They don't have to make it. Is a choice that they are taking away the winter fuel allowance from vulnerable people, and they are paying increased amount of pay to train drivers. Now, that is not right, in my view, and I think the country is probably saying that need too. But it is a choice. This Labour government have made it. I think there will be actually some sort of sweetener in the budget.
I don't think so. Not from this lot. Listen,
I think they've got to.
Talking about this, but what about Jazz Athwell? Now, I'm not going to let this go away. I'm not going to let them get away with this, because they came out with their renters reform, which they've now changed the name for, and this and that's going to happen, and they stood and talked about it, but then no one mentioned Jazz Athwell, who is an MP, who did absolutely breached his own rules. He was head of Redbridge Council. He set up the licensing. He was in charge. He didn't pay the licence, and his flats are infested with ants and damp.
Absolutely.
Why is no one talking about that?
And I think that's a very good question, because the one thing that Jazz Athwell said is that he wasn't aware of the problem.
It's rubbish.
And he sacked the tenant management agency who was supposedly responsible. I find that incredibly difficult to believe, because the tenant management company would go to you as the landlord to say, we've had X amount of complaints about your property. The idea, but he was on record and saying, I wasn't aware. I think that's a lie.
That's no defence, anyway. Just let's pretend that he wasn't aware. How is it that he hadn't paid all the licences? He's got about 15 or 18 properties. 7 of those licences were not paid. He is in charge of the council. The council hold the licences and go and investigate. So, again... How is he getting out of that?
And that should be fairly easy to check. It should be a matter of record. If the management company have written to him or communicated with him in any way, that should be fairly easy to check. But these things are being swept under the carpet.
So they're talking about all the other stuff, so we won't focus on that. I'm not going to let them get away with it personally. I have been a landlord for many years, and if I had done that, I would be in trouble. He's not getting away with it.
Of course.
But it's that whole sense, isn't it, of one rule for one and one rule for another. It is interesting, I think, with both of these issues, is how much resentment and anger is building in those closed doors in Labour HQ, because they're right at the very start of this honeymoon period, if you can even call it that. But there were 53 Labour MPs that abstained from that vote on winter fuel payments. But they mustn't be happy. Only one voted against.
Exactly.
But there's that anger that you're talking about, and there must be there too.
It's a very personal thing, because a lot of people on social media are saying, this is my local MP, they voted for this. You know, my local MP, unfortunately, Meg Hillier, stood up and defended this. And I feel, and a lot of people in our local area feel personally angry and disgusted. It is a very personal issue. And I think Labour MPs who basically were cowardly and abstained or invented dentist appointments, that kind of thing, that's going to come back to bite them. That won't be forgotten.
Well, Carol Vorderman, I don't know whether you've looked on her socials. She's now trying to apologise. Well, she's blocked me, obviously, because I'm very polite, but I have criticised her. And obviously I posted something on X saying, yes, there she was telling everybody, oh, this is how you tactically vote. This is how we'll make sure that we wipe out the Tories, how heartless they are. And now, of course, the Labour government are doing some very similar things. In fact, the Labour government had talked about winter fuel when the Conservatives were going to bring it in, and they had argued against it and said how terrible, and said just under 4,000 people will die. And yet now, there they are introducing it. Carol Vorderman has asked for an apology for Keir Starmer.
Well, I think we'd all like an apology for Keir Starmer.
She should apologise.
But she should also apologise for trying to...
Go away. You should just be quiet.
Stoke up tactical voting, which I think you should vote for something you believe in. But obviously, people didn't believe in this government because lots of people stayed at home. The turnout was so low. The majority is built on sand. And this is the problem. This goes to your question, Ellie, because, any advice I would give anyone... I mean, I remember, in 2019, obviously, the Tories came in, huge majority under Boris Johnson. That was eroded very quickly because of the pandemic and because MPs, OK, they were in their constituencies, but they had their inboxes flooded with people also criticising COVID and all the kind of issues that they were having to deal with, and they weren't able to be in Parliament and talk to other colleagues. There is a whole group of new Labour MPs that have obviously come into office. Their inboxes are going to be absolutely flooded, and rightly so, by the way, with the issue of the winter fuel allowance and obviously issues like, Jazz Athwell. And they are going to be worried very quickly. They're going to soon know how difficult it is being the party in government, and divisions will start to show. There will be splits within the Labour Party, and I think what is a very but it's a majority, but built on sand, that will erode very, very quickly. So number 10 have got to be careful how they treat their backbench MPs. They've got to be very careful about their strategy and what they're putting forward.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it's going to unravel very, very quickly.
Right, well, listen, what about the military going woke? This is in the Sun. Navy top brasses have renamed war training exercises for Royal Marines as the old ones were too sexual and aggressive, apparently.
Yes, indeed. Can we toughen up a little bit on our military? All this nonsense about whether or not they're allowed beards and whether or not they're allowed tattoos and what you call this and what you call that. What I want is a fighting force who are willing to defend our country. I don't mind whether they've got tattoos or beards or what they call their training exercises. And I also think that most women in the military are tougher nuts than most of the men. So, you know, this is more woke nonsense, I would say.
Well, do you think they're just scared of actually addressing the issues within the military, so they're just going to address these superficial things? Because, you know, they could perhaps pay the people more instead of spending money on DEI. They could perhaps, you know, give these people a better pension and look after them better afterwards. I mean, what is this?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, I'm not entirely sure. You know, some of the, I mean, what it's changed from me, for example, I think in the final bit of an action of an exercise, but even in just sort of, you know, the field, violent entry is now called, or is going to be called green salamander, if I pronounced that right. There's something called the final thrust, which is now going to be called...
which is what this is, Charlie Rowley. Thank you very much.
They all do sound a bit suggestive.
On that bombshell, on that
this
final
is breakfast telly.
This is breakfast TV. We're actually going to go for a brief break. Thank you very much, Charlie Rowley and Emma Wolfe. Back in a moment.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In for Manor, the A32 remains closed each way along Forthill Street in Enniskillen after a fire. In Northamptonshire, the A43 is blocked northbound. There's a problem between the Pikeshey turnoff and Norsley turnoff between Northampton and Kettering. There are long delays in both directions. The M40 in Warwickshire is closed northbound from junction 12 at Gaydon to 14 at Leamington after an accident causing queues in both directions. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, the inside lane's closed northbound where a car's broken down between junctions 12 and 13 towards Bedford, causing delays. The A1M in Hertfordshire is partly blocked northbound by an accident between junction 6 and 7 towards Stevenage, causing queues. On the M25 in Surrey, there's a lane closed anti-clockwise where someone's broken down just before junction 10 for the A3, with 3 miles of queues towards there. And Eurotunnel reporting a wait of up to an hour for passengers at Folkestone. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And good luck.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good morning to you. The NHS does less work. That's despite being handed more pay than ever.
Well, this is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. We're talking NHS. Reform or die were the words, but can the NHS transform itself? That is what we are doing. We spoke to Wes Streeting earlier and this is what he said.
We are not going to ignore hard truths and we are not going to sweep the problems under the carpet.
And then there were 4. The Tory leadership race continues with Robert Jenrick now in the lead and Tom Tugendhat trailing.
Harry is visa misery. The case over whether he lied about the drug use on his application has been quietly closed by a judge in a sealed ruling.
Fight night for presidential hopefuls. We look at the world's reactions to the first debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris.
Following the fiery face-off, Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris. So we're asking, should stars get involved in politics?
And it's almost time for the National Cat Awards. We're going to be meeting some of the formidable felines, bringing stories of companionship.
Cristiano Ronaldo has laid into his former boss Erik ten Hag at Manchester United as the club posts a loss for the 5th consecutive year. Gareth Southgate, meanwhile, gives his first interview since the Euros, and in cricket, England suffer a T20 defeat to Australia.
Good morning. An even colder night to come tonight, but it should warm up as we head into the weekend. Find out all the details with me a little later on.
It's just coming up to 8 o'clock. I'm Ellie Costello.
I'm Nana Aquare, and this is GB News Breakfast. Right, well, Shadow Health Secretary Victoria Atkins joins us now. Victoria, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Victoria, can we start with the report which found that the NHS are basically, they've got plenty of money, but it's been very badly spent. Can you tell us a bit more of your thoughts on that report and whether you felt it was even necessary to do?
Well, look, I think we all acknowledge that the NHS is struggling with some of the pressures that it is facing in the 21st century. Everything from the fact we're all living longer, which is, of course, is good news, but we're living longer, sadly, with more major conditions. And so, as Secretary of State, I wanted to reform our NHS to make it faster, simpler and fairer. And to do that, I announced a productivity plan of some £3.5 billion to really upgrade the technology with which our staff are working on the front line, expanding the NHS app. Some 3 out of 4 of us have the app on our phone, and we want to do even more with it, and also using the opportunities of things such as voice-generated AI. But what I'm concerned about, we have to marry reform with investment. I've been very clear about that. And what concerns me is, as we see from this report, if the Labour government isn't serious about ensuring that reform is married with investment, then that will have a very, very negative impact on the NHS. And I'm concerned because the first action of this government was to allow a budget-busting pay rise for junior doctors with no productivity forms attached. And they are also, I hear, going to cancel the productivity plan that I was bringing forward for technology. And if that is what they're doing, then that is of concern, because I fear we're in for an even rougher ride.
Well, we did put that to the Secretary of State for Health, Wes Streeting, a little bit earlier on. He said in the long term that strike action was going to cost more than just settling with the junior doctors. That's what he had to say. Look, Sir Keir Starmer is expected to outline later on. He's going to lay the state of the NHS. He's going to talk about how disastrous it now is because of the 2012 Health and Social Care Act. He's going to say that that proved disastrous for the NHS. He said Lord Darzi, in this report, has said it's been the most austere decade since the NHS was founded. He talks about crumbling buildings, decrepit porter cabins, mental health patients accommodated in Victorian-era cells infested with vermin. The 2010s were a lost decade for the NHS. That's what he's going to say. Those are the years under your watch. As Tories, that's when you were in government. Do you accept responsibility for the state of the NHS as it is now?
Yeah, and if you can hear noise in the background, I'm afraid there's a helicopter going overhead, so I hope you can hear me. So can I just pick you up on the strikes point? What is concerning, the reason why productivity reform should have been married with those pay rises, and indeed we should have asked ourselves, or the Labour should have asked themselves their question as to whether or not the taxpayer could afford it, given what they're now saying or claiming about the economy, is that the Junior Doctors Committee has promised that they will look to strike. They're going to consider striking again in the spring. And so this is what I was trying to deal with as Secretary of State, namely trying to improve working conditions for everybody in the NHS so that as well as fair pay from a taxpayer perspective, we were getting better productivity through the NHS. But if I can just deal with this point about the 2012 reforms, what is puzzling is that the former Labour Minister, Health Minister, and former Labour peer Lord Darzi, who has written this report, he supports supported the Lansley reforms in 2012, I'm told. I wasn't in Parliament at the time, but that is what the Hansard and records of the time suggest. And the equally puzzling thing is that the worst area in Great Britain for health outcomes on pretty much every measure is Wales. They have 1 in 4 of their population on NHS waiting lists. On average, a Welsh patient is waiting 7 weeks longer than an English patient, and they have 23,000 people waiting longer than 2 years, whereas in England we have 120 people. Now that's relevant because the NHS in Wales has been run for the last 25 years by Labour. So if they are concerned about the health measures in England, why have they not also looked at their own performance in Wales? And I've written to the Secretary of State today asking him why it is that the same attention is not being paid to patients in Wales. But in terms of the austerity allegations, again, although of course we as Conservatives have invested and protected NHS investment throughout all our time in office, and in fact now we have more doctors, more nurses and more investment in the NHS than ever in its history, it isn't just about how this money is spent. It's not just how much is spent, it's how it is spent. And again, I come back to the fact I wanted to reform the NHS. I put this productivity reform forward, which was created with the NHS and was going to save tens of millions of clinicians' hours by the end of the decade, improve productivity, make sure that the doctor's looking at the patient more than at their computer screens, and yet Labour apparently is going to cancel those plans. That doesn't sound to me like a government that is serious about raising productivity and improving outcomes in our NHS.
Victoria, no, I hear you, but I just want to ask you, how many health ministers did the Conservative Party have from 2018 until you got the job?
I don't know the number to that, simply because, as you'll appreciate, I've been trying to wade through a 163-page report overnight and try and work out what they're saying. So forgive me, I don't have that number at the tip of my fingers. But what I do know, when I was Secretary of State, I threw everything I could into it because I want, the NHS is genuinely one of the reasons I came into politics. I was diagnosed with diabetes at the age of 3. I have seen the very best of the NHS, but I've also seen some of its darkest corners, and so I threw everything I had at trying to reform the NHS whilst I was there. But I also want to have a constructive conversation with the Labour Party about how they are going to reform the NHS, and I'm not sure that this report and the way that they've trailed it and leaked it is the best way of going about that.
All right, Victoria, but I can tell you now, including yourself, that's seven since 2018. So whilst we respect that you really put everything into it, the problem is that a lot of this devastation to the service happened whilst the Conservatives were in power. So I think a lot of people, whilst we do respect that now, obviously we can't blame that all on you. There's a lot, a lot will be attributed to them.
OK, Victoria Atkins, I'm afraid we're out of time with you. Thank you so much for your time.
OK.
Thank you so much,
Invite me back on. We'll continue the conversation.
I will absolutely have you back on. Come on my show, Victoria. We'll get you on. We'll have a sit-down chat about it. Thank you.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you very much. So let's remain with that top story, shall we? The Prime Minister has said the NHS must reform or die. This is a report by the former Labour Health Minister, Lord Darzi, who described the state of the NHS as dire and in critical condition. The report finds that failings in care had led to the deaths of thousands of patients a year.
Big picture finding is the NHS is in a serious, critical condition. But the vital signs are normal, which will suggest that we can do something about this. To do it well, we need to engage the whole staff, patients, the public, the political leadership, all aligned to make that change happen as quickly as we can, because we can't wait.
So Keir Starmer is set to make a speech on the big history imaging of the NHS later on this morning. He'll say that funding will be moved away from unproductive hospitals, but will insist that taxes will not be raised to provide more funding.
Well, GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley joins us now. Very good morning to you, Olivia. Let's talk about the Darzi review, shall we? And then the thoughts of Wes Streeting and Victoria Atkins, who've both been on the programme this morning. What do you make of it all?
Well, the Darzi review, which was completed by Lord Darzi in just 8 weeks, it was commissioned by Wes Streeting 1 week after the general election, is a pretty damning indictment of the NHS. But as we heard him say just there, the vital signs are good. So Keir Starmer is coming up with this 10-year plan to fix the NHS. Now, of course, a lot of what we're going to hear from the Prime Minister today is going to be about the failures of the last government. And in a way, that's fair enough. The Conservative government was controlling the NHS for the last 14 years, and this does seem to have been a dead era for the NHS. What is quite helpful for Keir Starmer from the Lord Darzi report is that Lord Darzi isn't really recommending just bunging loads more money at the NHS. In fact, he points out that funding has increased massively over the last 10 years, but that hasn't had a corresponding reaction in patient outcomes. So, for example, in 2019, the size of the workforce went up by 17%, but that didn't have any impact at all on waiting times because that upscaling of the workforce wasn't matched by an upscaling in equipment. So there were lots of people able to work, but no equipment for them to work with. This is urgent for the Prime Minister. He talks about large-scale reforms. He talks about prevention being more important. He talks about moving scans to the high street. This is what we're all expecting this afternoon. Moving scans out of hospitals and to the high street. These are all ideas which the Conservatives have aired before over the last 14 years. I don't think anything that he says is going to be brand new. What Keir Starmer is hoping that the political capital he's amassed from winning that huge general election victory will allow him to do something that the Conservatives weren't able to do. And he might be right about that. I think generally it is easier for Labour governments to reform the NHS because it isn't seen as quite such a toxic issue for Labour politicians as it is for Conservatives. That was actually something that Jeremy Hunt said when he won his seat in the general election in the summer. That said, the Prime Minister could well have problems when the unions start getting involved. If the problem in the NHS at the moment is lots and lots of staff and not very many machines, not very much equipment, well, perhaps one of the solutions would be to get rid of some staff and use that money to spend on equipment and infrastructure. That will be easier said than done for a Labour government because the unions will not like that.
I was wondering about that, whether he's really going to focus on a lot of the bloated management structure of the NHS, because a lot of even the staff, the frontline staff, complain about the managers all the time. So is that likely to be one of his main focuses?
Today, it's unlikely that he's going to get into the nitty-gritty of potential job losses further down the line. But he has made very clear that he will not be raising taxes on ordinary working people in order to give more money to the NHS. In fact, he said that what needs to be done is a top-down reform of the NHS, which won't, he hopes, involve any more money. Well, how exactly do you go about doing that without de-bloating that management structure? So I think that might be a problem for the Prime Minister a bit further down the line, but we're reading between the lines a bit at the moment here.
Well, we should look forward to that. His comment later on. Olivia Utley, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Now to the US and the case over whether Prince Harry lied about drug use on his visa application to the United States has been quietly closed by the judge in a sealed ruling.
Judge Carl Nichols filed the order in Washington after reviewing the Prince's US immigration documents for 4 months after the Duke admitted to taking cocaine and other drugs in his memoir Spare. So people have been asking how he would be able to obtain a US visa.
Well, in other royal news, Prince Andrew, who is still living at Royal Lodge in Windsor, has been told to pay costs for the upkeep and security or move out.
Earlier, we spoke to royal correspondent and writer Michael Cole.
Carl Nichols has sealed the file on his application to have residence in the United States. Now, on that form you have to fill in, there is a question which says, do you use drugs or have you ever been a drug addict? Tick the box. Now, if people tick the yes box, I have, normally, there are exceptions, but normally the application would be refused and the person would not be allowed to become a resident in the United States. Now, the judge has sealed that, which will probably infuriate the Heritage Foundation, a right-wing pressure group, which has been pushing the Department of Homeland Security to have this matter matter released, because the Americans do take these matters very, very, very seriously. And if Prince Harry has been given an exception, or perhaps he hasn't filled in the form correctly, well, we don't know, because the file is sealed. It's very important because Prince Harry, his whole future now is tied up in California. His daughter, Prince Lilibet, was born there, and his future is very much there. So if he were to be refused an extension of his visa to remain, the question would arise, where would he go? Back to Canada, where he was before? Back to this country? Well, of course, he could do that. It's a difficult situation, but for him, it's a move forward, definitely a win for Team Sussex.
And Michael, whilst we have you, can we talk about the troubles of Prince Andrew? Because they're not gone very far. In fact, there's more of them now. There's a new Amazon Prime series, isn't there, called A Very Royal Scandal, which documents that November 2019 interview on Newsnight. How is that going to go down for the royal family? And also we're hearing about this ultimatum that the King has given Prince Andrew about Royal Lodge in Windsor.
Yeah, the King seems very determined that his younger brother should either take over the responsibility for upkeep of the house, of course, which he has a 75-year lease on, but also for his own security. And that's going to be a very big number. At the moment, the King is paying for all that, but the contract for the people who've been providing the security at Royal Lodge, that runs out very soon, and the King says he's not going to continue to pay it.
That was Michael Cole earlier. Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom.
Rachel Reeves has defended claiming taxpayer-funded expenses for heating her second home after the government plans to cut winter fuel payments for pensioners cleared the Commons.
In yesterday's exchange at Prime Minister's questions, Rishi Sunak pushed Sir Keir Starmer for details on the impact of the cuts, which will see 10 million pensioners lose their payment. Despite the opposition, the Prime Minister insists it's necessary to fix a £22 billion financial shortfall.
House prices are showing signs of increasing for the first time in nearly 2 years as market activity picks up. That's according to surveyors. Price growth moved into positive territory last month for the first time since October 2022. The Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors has said.
A mother who went on holiday to Ibiza rather than attending her son's sentencing for his role in the riots has been ordered to pay compensation to the victims.
Her 12-year-old son, one of the youngest involved in last month's riots, admitted violent disorder in Manchester. The 30-year-old mother was ordered to pay £1,200 in compensation, approximately the same price as her holiday, and attend a 6-month parenting course.
And the King found himself in the middle of a scrum when he accepted a hug from a New Zealand women's rugby player. King Charles laughed as he was affectionately mobbed by the Black Ferns in the UK to take on England's Red Roses. After he said, "Hug, why not?"
Now, yesterday I came home from holiday and I had a right shock. It felt like winter had set in.
Did you put your heating on?
No.
Really?
I've said to myself, it's not happening till October. It can't happen.
I've put mine on. Forget that. Yeah.
When did you put yours on?
Oh,
officially?
last week. I absolutely hate being cold. So that is, and this is the thing. Those MPs keeping their fuel allowance, whilst expecting pensioners to give up theirs. I would like to see them reciprocate and give up their allowance too, but let's find out what the weather will be like. Let's go to Annie Shuttleworth.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Another pretty cold feeling day to come for many of us. Still a few showers as well, but also some sunshine, particularly throughout the rest of this morning across eastern areas of England, once again, similar to yesterday morning, in fact, as well as parts of Scotland too. Now, the most frequent showers this morning will be across parts of North Wales. They'll push further inland through the rest of the day into the afternoon, and cloud will bubble up just about everywhere, bringing a risk of showers to most areas, but they'll be most frequent across coastal areas. And if you're exposed to this northerly Arctic wind, you will notice a chill in the air once again. As we head into this evening, though, this northerly wind does slowly start to shift to more of a northeasterly wind. So that means that showers will become more dominant across eastern parts of the country. Eastern areas of northern England seeing quite a few showers, but that does also mean that it will turn drier across western areas, particularly across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, where we've really seen the bulk of the showers for the past couple of days. Still a few showers inland here and there, but for most of us, it should stay fairly dry, though some showers will likely continue across the far north coast of southeastern England overnight tonight. Clearer skies will develop. We've got high pressure building in to end the week, so clear skies quite widely. Temperatures will fall away quite quickly this evening. It's likely to be the coldest start tomorrow morning of the week so far, and temperatures could be as low as around -4 degrees in northern areas, -1 or 2 across some rural areas further south, so potentially a grass frost out there for you on Friday morning, but also quite a lot of sunshine. And Friday is going to be a nice bright day. The sunshine should be much more longer lived through the day compared to the rest of the week, but we will see cloud building in from the northwest. You can see it moving into parts of Northern Ireland here, western Scotland to end the day on Friday. But ahead of this area of rain, a fine day and temperatures climbing towards the mid to high teens.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, it's time for the Great British Giveaway, the biggest cash prize that we've ever given away. £36,000. It could all be yours. It's like having, in fact, it's exactly like having...
It is.
£3,000 tax-free in your bank account each month for an entire year. Think of it as an additional salary. So what would you do if we were paying you to have the year off? Well, don't just dream about it. Here are all the details that you need to make it yours.
This is luck.
Now, do you have a cat at home?
Oh, no. God, no.
You don't like cats?
No, Ellie.
Oh, I love cats.
You would be, if you were an animal, you would be a cat.
Do you think?
She's got big, or maybe Tweety Pie. She's got such big blue eyes. Ellie's got huge blue eyes. But yeah, do you like cats?
I do like cats. I don't have one, but I do like them. I'm more of a dog person, to be honest. But I'm a friend to all animals.
Oh, well, I like
cats.
animals. I like animals, but I would never have a cat in my house.
Well, if you do have a cat at home, please send in a picture and a name, and we can share as many as we like, because we're celebrating our feline friends today, aren't we?
Yes, it's the National Cat Awards. That's the next. Stay tuned. This is GB News with Nana and Ellie.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
My next guest is a composer and film director whose musical journey began at the tender age of 4.5 when he started playing the piano. Under the tutelage of luminaries such as Sir George Benjamin and Sir Harrison Birtwistle, he has honed his craft, primarily grounding himself in the classical world. He's written music in sets of composition in the 24 major and minor keys of the chromatic scale, producing an album which is accompanied by 24 videos, and it's called 24. I'm joined now by Fabio D'Andrea. Fabio, great to see you. Tell me a little bit, I'm a layman when it comes to music, tell me a little bit about how a composer chooses a key and what it means to the composer to have chosen the key.
Sure. Well, I think every musical key, and there's 24 of them, major and minor, they have their own feel. So you could play a piece in, say, C major, which is normally regarded as the simple key, it's all the white notes on the piano. But if you play that piece, say, in A-flat major, it's going to have a very different feel. So I decided to create this project, 24 pieces, again, looking back at our traditions and the history of what composers have done in the past, especially in regards to piano music, and explore every key, see if I could bring out the emotion that you feel from that actual key itself.
Were you fonder of some than others? I imagine, for example, you're not so fond of C because it's too straightforward.
Actually, no, I love all of them. And that's the beauty of music. Every key has its own feel. And some keys are associated with different feelings. So, for example, C major has actually been historically associated with victory. It's quite a victorious feel about it. I love D-flat major. That's quite mellow. But every key has its own special feeling. And sometimes something will just sound different in that one key, and it's meant to be in that key. So for me, this has been a whole exploration of that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel. Well, the National Cat Awards are back to celebrate real-life stories of heroism, of cats, and companionship in the feline world. What? The winners will be announced. The cats just come to your house if they want food and then they leave. Will be announced on Wednesday the 18th September at London's One Marylebone Hotel.
Well, this year's nominees include Marmaduke, you'll like this, who helped his owner recover from the trauma of being a first responder after the Manchester Arena attack, and Marley, who lives in a safe house, comforting women that were formerly the victims of exploitation or enslavement.
Oh, but that's sweet. OK, so we're delighted to be joined by the owner of Cat Incredible, Marley, and also Director of Cats Protection, who is the organiser of the awards, Catherine Cottrell. Well, do you know what? I actually think that that's really lovely.
You eat your words, Nana.
No, I don't eat my words. I mean, I don't want a cat, and, you know... But I have to say that I do like to hear if somebody's being helped by an animal. So talk to me about this, then. We'll start with... I'll start with Catherine Cottrell. The awards. Talk to me about those.
Well, the awards are an incredible celebration, as you say, of the nation's cats, and really about the special bonds that that cats often have with humans. I mean, you've talked about the stories of Marley and Marmaduke, and they're just two of the incredible 11 finalists that we're going to be then announcing the winners of 4 different categories on Wednesday, and also announcing the nation's cat of the year. So it's a very special day for cats. We've got celebrities who love cats coming along to the awards as well, and we're going to be talking about it all over our social media. So at Cats Protection on X, on Facebook, on Instagram. So really encourage everybody to come and hear about all those stories and find out who the winners are.
Karen, let's bring you in and tell us about your cat, Marley, because he just sounds absolutely incredible.
He is truly amazing. So he lives here at Caritas Paquita House. We actually try to assist women in their journey to recovery, which is often a long journey as they've been exploited and brutalised for years. Marley, he bridges that gap because we've had women from 50 countries, and obviously there is a barrier with the languages, but he transcends any language with the way that he goes to the women. He will approach them. He'll see if they're accepting of him. If they're not, he plays the long game and he stands back, and over weeks he gets closer. If they are, he's straight in there for a cuddle or a purr. He touches their legs. He puts his paw on their shoulders. You know, he does everything he can to make sure they feel that they're safe and that there's someone that cares.
Has Marley got a friend? Is there another cat there for Marley as well? See, listen to me, I've gone soft now.
Marley's not. Marley's like you, he's not keen on other cats. This is his place of work. He knows what he's doing. No, so he hasn't got any friends here with 4 legs, but he's got lots of friends with 2 legs.
He wants to be the only cat in the village. I don't blame him. I'm the same, I really am.
Catherine, tell us about some previous winners then, because I actually went to the awards last year, and there are just some incredible stories, aren't there, of cats who have made such a difference to not only their owners' lives, but their communities.
You're right, that there absolutely are. And last year's winner was Zebby, and Zebby supports Genevieve, who's deaf. And so Zebby really was Genevieve's and is Genevieve's ears. So just making Genevieve feel really safe, know when somebody's coming to the door, know when the phone is ringing, and well, you were at the awards. It was a very, very emotional night. Genevieve was thrilled, and we are sure that Zebby got lots of cuddles after that.
Oh, we've just been distracted because Marley's on screen now. Does Marley scratch? Does he do scratching, or doesn't do that? Because I don't like cats that scratch.
Oh, no, he doesn't scratch. He's really very gentle with the women. Very gentle. And cats, unlike dogs, they will give you a warning if they're going to attack.
Is it? What does Marley do?
Put his paw out so you know it's too much.
Oh, I see. No more. OK, Marley.
Do you think, Karen, that Marley was meant to do this? I mean, it sounds as though he is so gentle with those women. He only approaches them if they need him or want him there. It's like he knows what he needs to do.
He's super amazing because he's never had any training. I do think that he had trauma in his previous life because he came through a rescue centre. He's only ever reacted really badly to one person that's come into the house, and you could see he was petrified, like it reminded him of something. So I think maybe his trauma has led him to be as he is with these women, because they are truly very traumatised, and he just bridges that gap so well for us.
Oh, well, maybe you do need to get a couple more cats then, though. But obviously, if Marley's not having it, but still, you know, maybe Marley needs to learn how to get on with other cats as well, though. Probably.
He's doing a great job, though, isn't he?
Good for Marley.
Catherine, just before we let you go, so we're going to find out who's won on the 18th of September, so it's coming up very close. What are you looking for in this year's winner?
Well, we're looking for stories that really make you smile and that are heartwarming. Some cat that's really been able to connect with a family or with their community and make a real difference, because this is all about that real connection that cats have and that they can change lives.
And do the people bring their cats to the awards as well? Or do they just...
For welfare reasons, cats wouldn't like really being at the awards. So what we have the owners, the families. It's a really big celebration for them, alongside cat-loving celebrities as well, who really want to celebrate the moment.
Like you, Ellie.
That's why I was there, yeah.
Is it?
Thank you two. Really good to speak to you, Catherine and Karen, and also to meet Marley as well. What an honour. And I think Marley should win. If I get any sway.
But didn't he go in last year? He can't just keep winning every year.
He's up this year.
Because he's going to be like Anton Deck every year.
Winning every single year. But it is a lovely award, and they play out the videos of what these cats have done for their families and their communities. And even I was thinking last year, I was like, oh, please, what has a cat done? But then you get there and they really do help children, families, communities. It's lovely.
So it's not a bunch of people who are completely mad?
Yes. No, it's not. Great. All to look forward to on the 18th September. We'll tell you who the winners are. If you've got a cat at home who's done some wonderful things for you and your family, do send in a picture and tell us a little bit about them, and we'll share as many as we can.
Lovely. Well, listen, still to come. Aidan has your sports. That's next. This is GB News with Nana and Ellie.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In the Highland, the A9 is closed southbound from the A96 Raigmore interchange to Sir Walter Scott Drive in Inverness for an investigation. The M1 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed northbound. Someone's broken down between junctions 41 and 42 towards the M62, causing delays. In Greater Manchester, the A576 is closed each way along Manchester Old Road at Higher Blakely after an accident. Trains have been stopped southbound from Stockport to Stoke-on-Trent after a train broke down at Cheadle Hulme. In Northamptonshire, the A43 is blocked northbound for an investigation between Northampton and Kettering, with delays in both directions. The M40 in Warwickshire is closed northbound from junction 12 at Gaydon to 14 at Leamington after an accident, with long delays each way towards there. And on the M25 in Surrey, there's a lane closed anti-clockwise where someone's broken down just before junction 10 for the A3, with queues from junction 12 for the M3.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
Oh, no, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 33 minutes after 8 o'clock. It's time to get through all the latest sports news with Aidan McGee. Aidan, where should we start? Should we start with Ronaldo, who's criticising Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag?
Ten Hag, yeah, not for the first time, it has to be said. There was an interview where he criticised the Man United manager while he was still a United player, Ronaldo, and that hastened his departure. It was a bit of a battle of egos. Ten Hag won on that occasion. They went on to have quite a good season. Ronaldo went on and took the dollar in Saudi, or dirhams, or whatever they're called over there right now. And so there's another broadside going on. He's obviously still got some beef. And he said that a Manchester United manager can't speak in terms of, we're not really going to win the Champions League, we're not going to win the Premier League, we're not ready yet. He's saying that's not how he understands a Man United manager, of someone in that office, to be able to look forward to what comes in the future, because that's not the language of a manager of the biggest club in the world. That would be his view. He said this on the Rio Ferdinand podcast, which is coming out, I think, tomorrow. Yeah. And yes, anything Man United said by somebody of that stature is going to get hits, basically. I think it's going to go on his YouTube channel as well. In terms of has he got a point? Yeah, I think a lot of United fans would agree with him, but he's also quite a divisive character. And Ten Hag might say, well, since Ronaldo left 2 years ago, we won the FA Cup and we won the League Cup as well. But they finished 8th in the Premier League last season. Ellie, not good enough.
No. What's his goal with all of this, Aidan? What's he want out of this?
I don't know the answers to that, Ellie, purely because he doesn't play for the club anymore. I don't think he's necessarily trying to rewrite history. He doesn't need to do that. I mean, he won the Champions League with them in 2008. He also had a very good goal ratio when he went back the second time, even though it wasn't quite successful as the first time. But when he reflected first time, he was talking about the club standing still. The gym hadn't been updated. The chefs were still the same. The training ground wasn't befitting of a club in the 21st century. They were stuck at the end of the 90s or early 2000s. And so it's quite damning when when the club's about to be taken over. It didn't do much good to... Well, I'm not saying it affected the stock price or the share price. I'm not saying it went that far. But nonetheless, it's still... As a club, when you've lost your first two games, or two of your first three games in the season, you're under pressure, you've been beaten roundly or soundly at home by Liverpool, you don't want to be hearing from one of your most celebrated ex-players criticising the club, and it's not a good look for Ronaldo, I don't think. It's not a good look for Rio Ferdinand, who's hosting the podcast, and it's not good news for the club, who, by the way, posted losses again for the 5th time in a row. This was a club which was a cash cow for so many years. It was the embodiment of commercialism in football. 5 years in a row now, they've made a loss.
How have they managed to make losses like that?
Well, I think they're not competing in the Champions League every single season. There were COVID losses as well. That would account, Ellie, for what happened maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But you can't rely on that now, because they're in the Champions League last season. They didn't get out of the group necessarily, but they did win the FA Cup. They would have got prize money for finishing 8th in the Premier League. They've promised a round of cuts, which is going to save money next season. They cut 250 jobs. But if you look at the actual numbers here, I mean, despite those losses, they turned over £662 million. That's the most ever. And so I would have thought that was the most of any Premier League club in the history. So it's still an attractive proposition in terms of what it turns over. But you've got to start making cuts to turn that into profit, because at the moment they're in danger of falling foul of profit and sustainability rules, which could, in the long run, lead to points deduction. That would be an absolutely hellish situation for that club.
All right, what about Gareth Southgate? He said that the time was right for him to step down as England manager. I thought he'd already stepped down.
No, he stepped down a couple of... But he's
why
just
is he
been
saying it
reflective...
now?
Well, he gave it was an interview in aid of a 9/11 charity yesterday, and so he's reflecting on his time. He's been a bit revisionist. I think we can all agree on this table that it probably was, after 8 years, time for him to step down in the role. In terms of what he achieved, I don't think we can question the fact that he took England places they hadn't been for quite a long time, to Euro finals. But how many... I don't know about you two, you were watching the games the same as I was, but I mean, like, were you a bit frustrated when England got to a certain point in the pitch and they couldn't seal the deal?
I went through about 10 emotions. You start off, yeah, then it's, oh, no, then it's, oh.
10 emotions. Any advance on 10 emotions? Any more emotions from you?
It was just frustration, AJ.
It was.
I felt like they were playing well, but not good enough.
Yeah, you're right.
They're so close, and that's what was so frustrating.
They were. So the job for the incumbent, Lee Carsey, if he gets the job long term, you know...
Do you think he will?
It's his to lose. I mean, look, the point is they've given him, or they didn't give him, but he's been lucky to get 2 very easy fixtures to start with. But it's the same old problem for England, is when you face the teams in the top 5 in the world at major tournaments, can you overcome them? Yes, they beat Holland in the Euros, not the best Holland side we've seen. They beat Germany in Euro 2021, not the best Germany side we've ever seen. But sooner or later, when you go deep into these tournaments, you're going to face a France, you're going to face a Brazil, you're going to face Spain, and you've got to beat them. So far, we're not very good at doing that.
No, we sort of rely on luck and then the gods as well. Aidan Miggy, thank you very much.
Good to see you this morning.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Now, still to come, the SNP say pupils should put on generic gender-neutral uniforms instead of ties and blazers. We'll be going through the papers with Emma Wolfe and Charlie Rowley. That's next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Bank Holiday Monday, we'll be celebrating National Dog Day by uncovering how many pet owners would rather spend the bank holiday with their pet over their partner. In fact, new research has uncovered the 5 key personas that make up Generation Pet. That's a new wave of post-pandemic pet owners, with 58% saying they worry about their pet being diagnosed with a serious illness. Well, joining us now to tell us more about how we should be caring for our pampered pooches is Dr. Edwina Gildia.
Some of the interesting facts coming through that is that 80% of us think that pet as part of the family. The new pet owners who have come on board during the pandemic, there's a lot to learn with being a new pet owner. Interesting facts, as you mentioned, 1/3 of pet owners are preferring to spend time with their pet this weekend over their partner. 60% of pet owners, and dog owners specifically calling them out, say that their dog improves their mental health, and 55% noting that improves their physical health by getting out and about.
It's also about showing that love and appreciation for these animals which don't ask anything of us but love.
That was another point that came through this research that we did at Zoetis UK, is that they bring a purpose to life, and I think that's another thing to call out. It's so important for ourselves, for society, to have that purpose, but with that comes responsibility. And that's ensuring that we do support their health, and we know how to do that as well.
If you'd rather spend your bank holiday with your dog than your partner, maybe we've got too much of an over-reliance on our pets?
I think it depends on what way you look at it. For some people, it may be a connection. I think it's a positive thing that we have, and we should celebrate it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Right, well, joining us now to go through what's making the news is Charlie Rowley and Emma Wolfe. All right, Emma, shall we start with the GP flat for second month in a row? GDP, not the GD. Not the GP that's
We've been
flat.
talking about GPs all morning, haven't we?
Yeah,
The
that's what
NHS,
got
we
me.
can't get off the NHS.
The GDP flat.
Well, yeah, the economy basically
Gets calm,
flatlined
isn't it?
in July. Do you remember how this was all going to be about growth? It was the economy.
No, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
OK, it has to get worse before it gets better. Well, yeah, the GDP is flatlined, the economy is flatlined, and we're in a mess. We've basically had zero growth in July. Business confidence is on its knees. All this stuff about, workers' rights is seriously alarming business owners, and the economic news is pretty dire.
Grim.
So if we're making these tough choices, but it's all going to be about growth, you really have to wonder, what is the plan? What is the plan from the Prime Minister and the Chancellor?
The tone, Charlie.
This is what Benedict Spence was saying. Sorry, Nana. This is what Benedict Spence was saying earlier on. If we're talking about the biggest reform in NHS history, it needs to be funded. And if you're not going to tax working people, well, you need to create growth. You need to create wealth. And we're not hearing that yet.
No, and I mean, the one thing you can do is make efficiency savings within the NHS and redistribute it. But you're absolutely right. If it's going to have monumental reform in order to function properly and to be more productive, because productivity is slumped in the NHS, then obviously it might need a little bit of capital here and there. But the idea that, the Labour government's sort of first priority during the election was to grow the economy.
Yeah.
And clearly, we're not seeing that growth. Now, that was on the back of the pandemic, that was on the back of sort of slow growth under the Tories, under the last government, but there was growth, those green shoots of recovery, I think we used to call it.
It's true.
The first two quarters, there was growth.
Exactly.
0.2%, I think it was.
And inflation coming down. Inflation has risen a little bit, I think, last month. And obviously, growth has stagnated. So, the Labour government's mission to grow the economy has clearly not got off to the best start, because that, I think, plays into the fear of increases in taxes, the fear in which it will drive out investment, which will put people off coming to the UK to invest. All of that will choke off the economy, choke off growth in the economy. And so I think it's a shaky start, and just another thing that the Labour government and the Treasury are going to have to deal with.
And it's in these key sectors, construction and manufacture, which are showing declines, and that's really, really worrying, because this is fundamental. This is fundamental to any kind of buoyant economy. And when business confidence is plummeting, as we've seen since the Labour government came into power, you've got to be concerned about that.
Well, it's all the green stuff, it's the VAT raid, it's the rents, it's everything. They're touching things that are now causing alarm to businesses, and also the attack on people with a lot of money who are fleeing, and even if they say they're not, they are. All right, let's go on to... I really want to talk about Notting Hill Carnival, because this one is the Met admitting that Carnival's no longer safe. I mean, I went to Carnival. The last time I went, I was in a bit of a crush, pushed towards a vat of jerk chicken. I was about to be branded by a big steel drum, a boiling drum. I thought, God help me! And then I said, never again. I had to climb over all to get out. We've all got stories of Carnival. Do you think they're right to say that it's not safe? That's according to the Metropolitan Police Assistant Commissioner.
So the Metropolitan Police Federation have said now that the Carnival is impossible to police safely. We saw that they've said that 200 of their colleagues have been assaulted over the past few years. These are sexual assaults, physical assaults, policemen being... police officers being urinated and spat on. It's simply not safe for the public either. 2 people died. I don't know what you're laughing about. It's not funny at all.
No.
He's always got a smile on his face.
I know, but I mean, it's almost laughable, isn't it?
Well, yes, if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
But the point was
2 people died. Yeah, but 2 people died this year, and then now they're saying this is predictable and it's impossible to police safely. How are we allowing this to happen in London every year?
Well, I think the point that he was making was regard to the crushing. So he said that there's going to be a serious, major crush, because that's the biggest fear. And I agree. That's why, not for the knives are awful, it's always happening, but the crush was the reason.
Well, it's it's obviously become overcrowded, and there are too many people, and there are too many horror stories of whether you have overcrowding. I mean, Hillsborough and things like that in sort of stadiums, I know, but on the streets of London. I mean, I've never been to Notting Hill Carnival. I mean, I was tempted actually this year, but I was here. so I couldn't go.
When you're not here.
Alas. That's very kind. And so I think, look, you know, it is a festival that every year you hear about criminality, you hear about stabbings, you hear about sexual assault, you hear about you know, deaths on this occasion, and probably in previous years too. So something isn't right about it, and something needs to be done. And whether it needs to be whether there needs to be better policing, whether there needs to be airport security scanners as you're entering certain streets, whether there needs to be filtering of people, whether it needs to be rerouted. All of these things, I think, I'm sure, are being looked at.
Yeah.
But we keep coming back to this every year about criminality at Notting Hill Carnival, and it can't go on.
Yeah. I mean, also, broadly, there is a lack of respect for the police.
I think so.
Based on the videos that are out on social media, when you've got people grinding and twerking and gyrating on police officers. Barely clothed
people gyrating up against male police officers. If we'd seen that the other way around, that would not have been acceptable. I don't even think it's to me, it doesn't feel like a family spectacle. Maybe I'm being incredibly prudish, but I wouldn't take my young child to that. I don't think it's suitable, and it's certainly not safe. There are violent attacks, not just the crush, but the actual the stabbings that we see. You know, a young mother who was killed this year.
To break up a
How
fight.
is it acceptable?
Well, look, I don't know, but a lot of people saying
because
the
it's a
answer is-
cultural festival.
It's not, it's not. I don't know whose culture
we
it's
seem to be
about.
unable to criticise it and say this isn't actually any longer acceptable on our streets.
I'm not afraid to criticise it. I wrote about it in the Daily Mail last year. I think it's a frightening event in the streets. It should be moved. I'm not saying get rid of it. I think it's a lovely idea to celebrate Caribbean culture, and that's great, but not in the streets of London where millions of people can just come in willy-nilly like that. Put it in an enclosed place like Hyde Park or one of the big parks in London and let people... And then police the knives.
it's not
Can't have
really
people
Notting
running
Hill
around
Carnival,
with
but-
zombie knives and things like that. I mean, come on.
Yes, no, I think I read that piece that you did. Yes, it's very good. And so,
I got a lot of flack for it.
Well, you know, but the thing about the policing side is also, you know, you want your police to. I think there's a line that sometimes gets crossed. You know, police are there to, you know, prevent crime, but they're also there to make sure that everybody is safe. And I think, look, if you're going to reduce or remove tensions within the community or festival goers by maybe enjoying a bit of the festival or just sort of, you know, or whether it's Pride in London, whether it's Notting Hill. But there is a line that can sometimes be crossed when the police have stopped doing their job as policing the event and just become part of the action.
Oh, I remember that one, the dancing police.
Exactly.
Doing the...
Exactly. So, you know...
undercover rape.
Or the rainbow stuff. Yeah, I mean, come on.
I'm all for prevention and, you know, allowing to prevent community tensions to be stirred, but, you know, policing has to be the priority.
Charlie, let's stay with you, shall we? And this story in the Daily Telegraph from the SNP. Telling pupils that they should wear generic, gender-neutral uniforms and try alternatives to ties.
Yes, and it's another... I mean, yes...
They wouldn't be happy with you today, would they?
I thought this was quite a nice tie, as it happens.
We could swap, Charlie. Swap outfit.
No, thank you.
Well, he might say yes.
It looks better on you than
Oh,
it
he's
would
digging
on me.
himself out of that.
It looks better on you than it does on me. I can assure you.
If I was at the carnival, I'd probably be wrapping your tie around my neck.
Start the car. I think, look, this is... there's a hidden agenda here, I think, with the SNP. They should be focusing on educational standards which have fallen way below what's expected in Scotland. You're more likely to have a worse education outcome if you're a pupil in Scotland than you are in any other part of the UK. I can understand uniforms at times for parents, even though I'm not one, but you hear about the stories. The cost of, you know, uniforms can be too high, and actually you might want to try and, you know, offer an alternative, something that might be a generic blazer rather than one, you know, and you can sew the badge on rather than one that's come from a particular brand or school or whatever. But that's one thing. But the idea of sort of neutralising uniform in general, of course, if you're, you know, a girl, and you've got to wear a blazer, that's absolutely fine. But if you want to wear trousers in the winter, that's fine too. You know, there's nothing gender neutral about trousers. Trousers are trousers. But I think the idea that you're saying, well, you know, actually, come on, we can all be the same, is ridiculous. You know, uniforms are there, I think, also to help educational standards. You know, the stats, you know, suggest that actually you do better if you wear a uniform at school. It helps you in the workplace when you grow up, when you get a bit older, and you have to wear a suit and tie or whatever as a male. Then you do that at school, it helps with discipline. But the idea that we're pandering maybe to a very, very small minority of people who might suffer from gender dysphoria, that might have issues that they need sort of help with, that is one thing. But you take those people on a case-by-case basis. You don't say to the overwhelming majority of boys and girls that your uniforms now have to be uprooted and changed.
Why not? Well, look, I mean, I'm not somebody... I think that actually you should just... the uniform thing is fine. I think it creates discipline. I agree with everything you said. But why not? If you're saying that everyone... Are they saying everyone can wear anything? Or they're saying that it's a neutral uniform, so girls can wear trousers, can the guys wear skirts? What are they saying? Is that what they're saying?
But it's just neutralising. It will be, you know, trousers and polo T-shirts rather than shirts, ties for boys and, you know...
Some girls like skirts. I don't know why they do that.
OK, so I'm in the first week of the school uniform hell. So my 4-year-old has started wearing... You go from having a baby to suddenly having a little child who wears trousers, a polo shirt, a branded jumper, a blazer, a rucksack, everything. It's amazing the change it makes, the difference it makes in terms of them growing up, them knowing that they're putting on their work suit, as it were, and going to school. I can't imagine my little boy going in a skirt, but that's just me. School uniforms are a whole new world of pain.
Yeah, well,
that's all I can say.
I've just bought the uniform for my son, who now wears a tie. He doesn't want to wear the tie. He won't wear the tie. But they, you know, they have set out...
I think ties are going quite far and caps and everything.
He has to wear a tie. 8 years old now. He's 7. He has to wear a tie. He doesn't know how to tie the tie.
And how do you feel about neutral uniform? If you just told boys and girls, polo and trousers?
I think it's absolutely
absurd.
Girls
love their summer dress.
I like wearing my skirts. I like my skirts. I like my dresses.
And their
Why are you almost defeminising women just to create this neutrality, which is absurd? We are allowed to be female. I want to be female. I love being female. A male, if that means trousers and that outfit, in their minds, then that can be male. I don't see why there's this big argument over the gender stereotypes, which aren't a reality. You can choose what you like, but I'm quite happy being a woman and wearing my womanly things.
And I think little girls love wearing their school uniform. And, by the way, they do have tights in the winter. It's not as though we're saying they have to wear a dress and freeze to death while the boys have trousers.
Leave the uniform alone.
Let us know what you think on that one. You'll definitely have a view. gbnews.com/you'll say. Look, we've got 1 minute 30 left, Emma. Should we talk about the drama of last night at the NTA's National Television Awards?
Yes. Well, should we talk about the post office drama, the post office, people versus
a worthy
post office?
winner.
Isn't it wonderful to see extraordinary people, but ordinary people, being celebrated? Something about the post office scandal, something about the Horizon scandal really hit a nerve with people. It's now on the big screen. It won Toby Jones, who's an amazing actor, isn't he?
Incredible.
Won Best Drama Performance. And, you know, the sub-postmasters, sub-postmistresses basically being celebrated with this big award and getting their story out there, getting the story out there that was ignored because it wasn't glamorous, it wasn't sexy, it was just postmasters for so long. So I think that's fantastic.
Charlie Rowley.
Yeah, no, I'm glad it's won. I must admit, I didn't stay up to watch the NTAs. I couldn't care less. But there we are. That's just me. But I'm glad that they won. It did highlight, obviously, a scandal in this country, and we should see more dramas and documentaries like that than maybe.
And I'm sure we will now.
There'll
be infected blood, and there'll be lots more dramas.
Well, we'd like to see perhaps the government focusing on that as well in their NHS address today as well. Hopefully, Keir Starmer might mention that. But keep your thoughts coming. gbnews.com/your say. We'll read some of them out. A lot of you talking about cats, so we will talk about those. Thank you so much, Charlie Rowley and Emma Wolfe. Stay tuned. Loads more next. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Another pretty cold feeling day to come for many of us. Still a few showers as well, but also some sunshine, particularly throughout the rest of this morning across eastern areas of England, once again similar to yesterday morning, in fact, as well as parts of Scotland too. Now, the most frequent showers this morning will be across parts of North Wales. They'll push further inland through the rest of the day into the afternoon, and cloud will bubble up just about everywhere, bringing a risk of showers to most areas, but they'll be most frequent across coastal areas. And if you're exposed to this northerly Arctic wind, you will notice a chill in the air once again. As we head into this evening, though, this northerly wind does slowly start to shift to more of a northeasterly wind. So that means that showers will become more dominant across eastern parts of the country. Eastern areas of northern England seeing quite a few showers, but that does also mean that it will turn drier across western areas, particularly across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, where we've really seen the bulk of the showers for the past couple of days. Still a few showers inland here and there, but for most of us, it should stay fairly dry, though some showers will likely continue across the far north coast of southeastern England overnight tonight. Clearer skies will develop. We've got high pressure building in to end the week, so clear skies quite widely. Temperatures will fall away quite quickly this evening. It's likely to be the coldest start tomorrow morning of the week so far, and temperatures could be as low as around -4 degrees in northern areas, -1 or 2 across some rural areas further south, so potentially a grass frost out there for you on Friday morning, but also quite a lot of sunshine. And Friday is going to be a nice bright day. The sunshine should be much more longer lived through the day compared to the rest of the week, but we will see cloud building in from the northwest. You can see it moving into parts of Northern Ireland here, western Scotland to end the day on Friday. But ahead of this area of rain, a fine day and temperatures climbing towards the mid to high teens.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In the Highland, the A9 is closed each way south of the A96 Raymore interchange at Inverness for an investigation. On the M1 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed northbound, someone's broken down between junctions 41 and 42 towards the M62. The M61 in Lancashire is partly blocked northbound by an accident between junction 9 for the M65 and the M6 causing queues. Trains have been stopped southbound from Stockport to Stoke-on-Trent after a train broke down. In Northamptonshire, the A43 is blocked northbound for an investigation between the Pytchley turnoff and the Morsley Village turnoff, causing delays each way between Northampton and Kettering. The M40 in Warwickshire is closed northbound from junction 12 at Gaydon to 14 at Leamington after an accident, with long delays each way towards there. And on the M25 in Hertfordshire, 2 lanes are closed anti-clockwise just before junction 25 for the A10 after an accident, causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's good luck.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. The NHS does less work. That's despite being handed more money than ever.
A landmark report has found that it is in critical condition, with surging waiting lists, poor cancer performance and a struggle to access care.
The Prime Minister says the health service must reform or die. Earlier we spoke to Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Wes Streeting.
We are not going to ignore hard truths, and we are not going to sweep the problems under the carpet.
And then there were 4. The Tory leadership race continues, with Robert Jenrick now in the lead and Tom Tugendhat trailing.
Harry's visa mystery, the case over whether he lied about drug use on his application, has been quietly closed by a judge in a sealed ruling.
Fight night for presidential hopefuls. We look at the world's reaction to the first debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris.
Good morning. An even colder night to come tonight, but it should warm up as we head into the weekend. Find out all the details with me a little later on.
It's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Ellie Costello.
And I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News Breakfast.
Now, we've got lots of views on cats,
yes,
haven't we? Because it's the National Cat Awards on the 18th of September, and we just spoke to one of the cats in the running for the top
Marley,
prize.
but we didn't speak to the cat itself, obviously, because they can't talk, which would be an incredible feat, and if they could, then they would absolutely win. Could you imagine?
They absolutely would. Well, we spoke to Marley's owner, yes, and he works at a women's sanctuary, doesn't he, a women's refuge, and he's essentially a therapy cat. He cuddles all those women that are so traumatised. So we've been asking you to send in your messages about your cats this morning. Joan says, my 2 cats are my treasured babies. Since I lost my soulmate, they're the only reason that I want to get up in the morning. Oh,
well, I'll read this one from Anthony. Anthony, sort of a man after my heart, but I softened throughout.
You did, you softened,
I wouldn't hurt any cat, but they are vermin and guilty of bird destruction. They are mainly the pets of lazy people who obviously the exception of immobile people. Yeah, see, that's how you feel.
Well, at least you're honest, Anthony. I appreciate that. Isabel says, my cat Teddy, that's a good name for a cat. My cat Teddy saved my life. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2017. He was the one that detected it after not leaving me alone in that area until I eventually went to the doctors. Oh, wow. And I got diagnosed. I owe my cat my life.
Do you know they can be very sort of intuitive in that way, and they have certain dogs that can detect illness as well, so there are therapy detection dogs that can detect certain diseases and from the smells and things. They're very good.
I just think animals are amazing, aren't they?
Well, no, some of them. Gordon says cats are OK, but keep them on your property. They come on mine at night and leave their poop in my planter pots, and it stinks or it's buried, and I find it accidentally with my hands.
OK, that's disgusting.
What, in your planter pots? But wear gloves. Wear gloves, my friend.
Yeah, gardening gloves is what we need. Sorry if you're eating your Weetabix this morning.
Apologies.
Or other cereals are available. Gary says, cat lovers, do yourself a favour and get a dog. They are our real friends and more loyal than any cat. Now, I agree with you, Gary. I'm more of a dog person than a cat person, it must be said. But I do think cuddles almost mean more from a cat.
That's because usually they're scratching. So if you do get one that's like soft paws that goes like that, but then even then I'm not sure I would trust them to not suddenly sink their paws in at any moment.
Yeah,
that's
but kind of what makes it more special.
Do you think?
I think dogs love everybody, whereas cats are a bit more selective.
Right, now, shall I do some politics ones as well?
Yeah, we should do some serious
Bill
ones.
talks about Labour, because we had Wes Streeting on earlier. He said, again, Labour, Starmer are looking to spend to solve the country's issues. Yeah.
Brenda says, I'm not wishing any harm to any pensioners. I am one. But I do hope that the NHS are inundated with cold pensioners this winter. And I hope the press keep on top of it. This lot need to start getting the message.
Yeah, no, we will keep on top of that. And ironically, Brenda, it was the Labour Party who told the Conservative Party, when the Conservative Party were planning something of the same with the winter fuel, that there'll be almost 4,000 deaths. And it was a terrible policy. So it's ironic that they've now taken it up.
Anita says MPs earn thousands. Sorry, they expect us to pay for our winter allowance. Maybe we should all claim to have a second home just to be near our jobs. Then why can't they just do exactly the same as the rest of us? They get a train or they drive into work like millions of us.
Well, do you know what? £90,000 a year, £93,000 a year, I think it is, plus the subsidised bars, plus all the other benefits that go along with being an MP, because that's not the end of the salary. So in the end, they probably end up with around about £120,000, because if you include second home allowances too. So I would say that they can afford it. They've got the broadest shoulders. They don't need that fuel allowance. Because you and I, if we had a job somewhere else, we'd have to drive there, pay for our fuel. We wouldn't get a second home because it's near it. I would actually insist and demand that they drop their own fuel allowances, because they can absolutely afford it.
Yeah. Loads of you getting in touch on that one, so do keep those views coming in. gbnews.com/yoursay. Now, the Prime Minister has said the NHS must reform or die. It's a report by former Labour Health Minister Lord Darzi, who's described the state of the NHS as dire and in critical condition. The report finds the failings in care have led to the deaths of thousands of patients a year.
Big picture finding is the NHS is in a serious, critical condition. But the vital signs are normal, which will suggest that we can do something about this. To do it well, we need to engage the whole staff, patients, the public, the political leadership, all aligned to make that change happen as quickly as we can, because we can't wait.
So Keir Starmer is set to make a speech on the biggest re-imaging of the NHS later on this morning. He'll say that funding will be moved away from unproductive hospitals, but will insist that taxes will not be raised to provide more funding. Earlier, we spoke to GB News' political correspondent, Olivia Utley.
Darcy review, which was completed by Lord Darcy in just 8 weeks, it was commissioned by Wes Streeting 1 week after the general election, is a pretty damning indictment of the NHS. But as we heard him say just there, the vital signs are good. So Keir Starmer is coming up with this 10-year plan to fix the NHS. Now, of course, a lot of what we're going to hear from the Prime Minister today is going to be about the failures of the last government. And in a way, that's fair enough. The Conservative government was controlling the NHS for the last 14 years, and this does seem to have been a dead era for the NHS. What is quite helpful for Keir Starmer from the Lord Darcy report is that Lord Darcy isn't really recommending just bunging loads more money at the NHS. In fact, he points out that funding has increased massively over the last 10 years, but that hasn't had a corresponding reaction in patient outcomes. So, for example, in 2019, the size of the workforce went up by 17%, but that didn't have any impact at all on waiting times because that upscaling of the workforce wasn't matched by an upscaling in equipment. So there were lots of people able to work, but no equipment for them to work with. This is urgent for the Prime Minister. He talks about large-scale reforms. He talks about prevention being more important. He talks about moving scans to the high street. This is what we're all expecting this afternoon. Moving scans out of hospitals and to the high street. These are all ideas which the Conservatives have aired before over the last 14 years. I don't think anything that he says is going to be brand new. What Keir Starmer is hoping that the political capital he's amassed from winning a huge general election victory will allow him to do something that the Conservatives weren't able to do. And he might be right about that. I think generally it is easier for Labour governments to reform the NHS because it isn't seen as quite such a toxic issue for Labour politicians as it is for Conservatives. That's actually something that Jeremy Hunt said when he won his seat in the general election in the summer. That said, the Prime Minister could well have problems when the unions start getting involved. If the problem in the NHS at the moment is lots and lots of staff and not very many machines, not very much equipment, well, perhaps one of the solutions would be to get rid of some staff and use that money to spend on equipment and infrastructure. That will be easier said than done for a Labour government because the unions will not like that.
I was wondering about that, whether he's really going to focus on a lot of the bloated management structure of the NHS, because a lot of even the staff, the frontline staff, complain about the managers all the time. So is that likely to be one of his main focuses?
Today, it's unlikely that he's going to get into the nitty-gritty of potential job losses further down the line. But he has made very clear that he will not be raising taxes on ordinary working people in order to give more money to the NHS. In fact, he said that what needs to be done is a top-down reform of the NHS, which won't, he hopes, involve any more money. Well, how exactly do you go about doing that without de-bloating that management structure?
Well, that was earlier at GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley.
Now, the Prince of Wales will attend the Sovereign's Parade on behalf of His Majesty the King at the Royal Air Force College, Cranwell, today.
In total, 48 RAF officers will be passing out at the parade, not literally, alongside 4 international officers from Jordan, Kenya, Pakistan and Uganda.
Well, our royal correspondent Cameron Walker is at RAF Cranwell for us now to tell us more. Good morning, Cameron.
Good morning, Ellie. Well, these graduating junior officers are getting a bit of a special treat today because it's actually incredibly rare for a member of the royal family to attend this Sovereign's Parade at RAF Cranwell. Just to give you some examples, the last time Prince Charles was here, then Prince Charles, now of course the King, was back in 2020. The last time Queen Elizabeth II attended this parade was back in 2009. So the fact that Prince William, the future King, is here today is very special indeed. Now, the Sovereign's Parade is the annual parade for the graduation of the junior officers at the RAF College Cranwell in Lincolnshire. It's the Air Force equivalent of the Sovereign's Parade at Sandhurst, which is of course for the British Army officers. And the King had a very busy day yesterday hosting a reception at Buckingham Palace, where there was that wonderful image of him hugging the New Zealand women's rugby team. And of course he's continuing cancer treatment, so because he's got a big tour coming to Australia next month, it was thought maybe perhaps that Prince William should represent him today rather than the King himself. So those graduating have been on the Commissioned Warrant Officers course and the Initial Officer Training course. As you mentioned, 48 RAF cadets are passing out today, as well as 4 international officer cadets from Jordan, Kenya, Pakistan and Uganda. All of them have been up to 24 weeks intensive training, making sure they have the skills and knowledge for a successful career in the Royal Air Force. So when His Royal Highness arrives here later on this morning, he will receive a royal salute before watching a fly past over the college building behind me. It's understood that a Boeing P-8 Poseidon aircraft will be flying over the college, which is an anti-submarine warfare aircraft, so it should be very impressive indeed for His Royal Highness and the passing out cadets and their friends and family who are here to watch. His Royal Highness will then inspect the front rank of the Guard and present 4 awards and will deliver a speech congratulating the graduates, and then after the parade he will be meeting those friends and family and of course the RAF officers graduating. There are as well some rumours that a special guest will be joining Prince William from his family, not the Princess of Wales, I hasten to add, but if you stay tuned a bit later I could tell you a little bit more about it.
Oh, hopefully it's one of the children. It'd be lovely if it was Prince Louis. And what a treat it's going to be for those graduates, Cameron. Do we know if the Prince of Wales, I'm not sure if you do, I'll put you on the spot, do we know if the Prince of Wales is still sporting his beard? Because that has divided people, hasn't it, his facial hair that he's been sporting in the past few weeks. Do you think he still has it today?
Oh, I mean, he really has divided opinion, hasn't he, with that one? He seems to be chopping and changing a bit because he had it, first of all, for that video when he was congratulating the athletes for the Olympics. He had the beard then he shaved it off for something else he did. He didn't have it in the video filmed last month where the Princess of Wales confirmed that she is no longer undergoing chemotherapy. But earlier this week, he did have it when he was in Wales. So we'll have to wait and see. There's no longer a rule in the British Armed Forces that you cannot have a beard, so perhaps he will keep it. So let's see. Of course, if you keep tuning into GB News, you'll find out later on this morning.
Cameron Walker, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
Thank you very much. He's going to have all the details for us, that special guest as well. A bit later on. Lots to look forward to on GB News today.
Right now, though, it's time for the Great British Giveaway now, and it's our biggest cash prize that we've given away ever. £36,000 could be yours. That's an extra £3,000 tax-free in your bank account each month for an entire year. What would you do if you were playing and winning that? Well, don't just dream about it. Here are the details of how you can make that yours.
Yes, good luck indeed. Now, do stay with us. Still to come, we're going to be joined by our lovely Steph Tichy to hear about the winners and the losers at the National Television Awards. That's next.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Angela, what have we got?
Hello, there's an awful lot, but I think the main interesting thing is that Prince Harry said a week or so, 2 weeks ago, I think it was, that he absolutely wasn't going to go to his uncle's funeral because there wasn't enough protection for him. His uncle, Lord Fellows, was married to Jane Spencer, who was Diana's sister, who was the most practical and helpful of the 3 children, the 3 girls, and she's done an awful lot for Harry. I thought it was just terrible. He wasn't going to go there, but he has been there. They didn't talk to William. William didn't talk to him. Did he get any protection who knows? And if he didn't, if he takes the government to court yet again, they would say, well, look, we managed without that, but we don't know about that. But also the paper, the magazine that does loads for Harry and Meghan, they were the ones who said he wasn't going, so they said what he wanted them to say.
He doesn't need any protection. I mean, how did he get there? Probably in a Bombardier private jet that gives off 60 times more carbon than anybody else.
Yes, well, we don't know about that. The good thing was that he was there, and of course today is Remembrance Day for Diana, the day she died. So that he went there and he was with her side of the family, and I think that that's very good and might help him feel a bit better about things.
But neither of them are doing well out of it. William is not doing well out of it. Harry is not doing well out of it. The King is not doing well out of it. Meghan Markle's not doing well out of it. Why can't they just...
No, I don't think it's that easy. I think that they might do much worse if they were together again.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, joining us now to discuss all of last night's showbiz gossip from the NTAs is Stephanie Tetchy. Very good morning to you. And it was a big win last night, wasn't it, for Mr Bates versus the Post Office?
Yes, they picked up 3 awards, biggest of the night, actually. Best New Drama, Best Drama Performance, and then also the Impact Award. And the reason why they won the Impact Award is because they've managed to bring politicians to be held accountable for the Post Office scandal. And Jo Hamilton used her moment on stage to make a powerful speech. She said that they are still waiting compensation. They met up with Sir Keir Starmer, and she says nothing has been changed. And the point of that is basically bringing the drama to the public's attention.
And we've actually got a clip of that moment, Stephanie, so let's have a quick watch.
I went to Westminster a couple of weeks back and saw the new minister, and trust me, nothing has changed. And almost... It's true. And almost all of these people behind me haven't been paid yet. And out of the group of 555, more than 300 haven't been paid yet.
And that's a shocking thing. She said at least 300 of the sub-postmasters still have not been paid. And they keep on using these award shows to kind of bring it back into the public periphery that, look, we're still waiting for our money and we've got a new government and by the sounds of it, nothing's changed.
Well, we had Wes Streeting on earlier and, you know, we really should have pushed him on that, actually.
There were so many things. If we'd had a bit more time, it would have been great to have put that to him.
And then also it was a big night for Strictly. Strictly's been rocked with many allegations of misconduct and bullying, but it picked up Best Talent Show yesterday, which means...
Surprising.
It's very surprising, but the thing with these awards, it's the public who vote for it. So clearly, Strictly still has a place in the hearts of the viewers at home. It's the 9th time they've won it, so they are on a roll. And this is ahead of the new series that will be coming.
Well, it's a great show, though, isn't it? I mean, I love Strictly Come Dancing. I love watching it.
But with all the allegations, you would think that it wouldn't win this year, but it still prevailed, hasn't it?
It does.
Does that mean it's all behind them, do you think, Steph?
I think it's going to be all eyes about the new series that's coming, which starts this weekend. Now they obviously got chaperones and they got many different things in place. So I think, obviously, the scandal has affected how Strictly's going to operate, but I think at being one of the most loved shows, I don't think that's going to change. It always does well in the ratings.
And what about Kate Garraway? Now
she won the Best Authored Documentary. You know, she really documented her husband's, Derek Draper's, battle with COVID, and, you know, being able to see that as viewers was quite emotional. So she won last night. I don't know if she will be doing any more documentaries, but the ones that she has done have been pretty powerful. And she was joined by her children as well.
Gorgeous children as well, both of them.
Darcy looks like the spitting
stunning.
image. It'd be interesting to see what she does in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Steph, thank you for bringing us up to speed with all of the gossip and the big wins from last night. Thank you very much indeed. Now, coming up at 9:30 is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, and they are here to tell us all about it.
Morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Morning. Obviously, we're going to be hearing from Starmer this morning about this report about the NHS and the situation there, which is obviously pretty diabolical. We want to hear from people at home about their experiences of the NHS recently. Is it that bad?
And we were saying, while it's normally you have these government reports take centuries. This report's been done in 9 weeks. I almost think, is it too quick? Because the NHS has been around since 1948. I suppose we know what's wrong with it. It's busted.
But this is the thing. Do we even need a report in the first place, Andrew? This is. Have we learnt anything new?
Well, what he's told us a lot of what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
And he says in the report we've got to move a lot of resources from hospitals to primary care and get more out of our doctors and surgeons. Good luck with that with the militant trade union, the BMA.
Yeah. And
I would say.
We're going to be talking about the Renters' Rights Bill as well. So if you are a landlord, your life just got that bit more difficult, particularly if you have a troublesome tenant, in terms of being able to kick them out or make restrictions or rules around who you can have in your property. And also...
I was going to say, what about Jazz Athwell there?
We're going to be talking about him.
Make sure you do,
the Labour
because
MP.
I don't think that should be allowed to go. They gave all this.
Biggest renter in Parliament.
Yeah.
15 flats, all appalling. Victorian squalor, and he still got the Labour whip.
Well, the licensing as well. He set up...
He did.
Head of the council at Redbridge. He set up the licensing.
He did, and ignored it.
Did not have licences for the majority of his...
Five-star hypocrite. So here's the government laying down the law to all these landlords.
Yeah.
They can't even sort out one of their own, who's an MP.
And we've got Debbie McGee coming on to talk about willanthropy, which is when you leave things in your will to charities.
She's great. She's a great... I love her.
And, of course, Strictly starts this week. My chair is sinking down, isn't it? Strictly starts this week.
Who's broken all these chairs? We have a theory. We have a theory, but we're not going to share it on air.
With chairs.
We have got new ones on order. They will be here anyway.
We think a presenter's broken them, but I'm not saying which one.
Well, all of them are broken, so I don't know how we've managed that. So it's an absolutely packed programme. Thank you very much.
Packed chairs, too.
And packed
clearly.
chairs. Clearly.
Well, we've
Thank you
got
very
some
much.
stuff, though. I've got some gifts for you, though. I bear Greg's Gifts. This is their London Fashion Week offering. Beautiful little charm bracelets, and I'm going to... Actually, I quite like the sausage roll earrings.
I had one of those.
Have you got the ordinary?
No, I've got on...
Let's look at those ones. 22-carat gold-plated, these are.
And I don't know whether you've done anything on the Queen's statue this morning.
Oh, the Queen's statue, not yet, no.
Oh, you've got to keep watching to see the latest statue of the Queen.
Yeah, we're going to... You'll struggle to know it is her.
It's entertaining for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
It's not much of a likeness.
No
is it?
likeness
We'll say that
whatsoever. It's
much.
humiliating for the sculptor.
Yeah. Oh, well, listen, Bev, Andrew, they're on the way next. Thank you to you for your company. Ellie, thank you to you as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll be back from 6 a.m. Yeah, I'll be back from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. And up next, as you've just seen, is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Another pretty cold feeling day to come for many of us. Still a few showers as well, but also some sunshine, particularly throughout the rest of this morning across eastern areas of England, once again, similar to yesterday morning, in fact, as well as parts of Scotland too. Now, the most frequent showers this morning will be across parts of North Wales. They'll push further inland through the rest of the day into the afternoon, and cloud will bubble up just about everywhere, bringing a risk of showers to most areas, but they'll be most frequent across coastal areas. And if you're exposed to this northerly Arctic wind, you will notice a chill in the air once again. As we head into this evening, though, this northerly wind does slowly start to shift to more of a northeasterly wind. So that means that showers will become more dominant across eastern parts of the country. Eastern areas of northern England seeing quite a few showers, but that does also mean that it will turn drier across western areas, particularly across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, where we've really seen the bulk of the showers for the past couple of days. Still a few showers inland here and there, but for most of us, it should stay fairly dry, though some showers will likely continue across the far north coast of southeastern England overnight tonight. Clearer skies will develop. We've got high pressure building in to end the week, so clear skies quite widely. Temperatures will fall away quite quickly this evening. It's likely to be the coldest start tomorrow morning of the week so far, and temperatures could be as low as around -4 degrees in northern areas, -1 or 2 across some rural areas further south, so potentially a grass frost out there for you on Friday morning, but also quite a lot of sunshine. And Friday is going to be a nice bright day. The sunshine should be much more longer lived through the day compared to the rest of the week. But we will see cloud building in from the northwest. You can see it moving into parts of Northern Ireland here, western Scotland to end the day on Friday. But ahead of this area of rain, a fine day and temperatures climbing